of the war in Iran, somewhere in the trillions. Then, with a dispatch from the relationship and romance world, Love Letters columnist Meredith Goldstein is here. Then we'll end the show with a friendship check-in. In the midst of a loneliness epidemic, if you don't have enough friends, how do you find more? It's all ahead on BPR, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Oklahoma Republican Senator Markwayne Mullin is at his Senate confirmation hearing to be Homeland Security Secretary. The DHS is partially shut down over Democratic concerns about federal immigration agents' operations. New Hampshire Democratic Senator Maggie Hassan pointed to the killing of Minneapolis protester Alex Pretty in January. Mullin responded.
I don't get to choose the laws that I enforce. You guys pass the laws. I enforce those laws.
Right.
And the reason why we
shooting a protester who was exercising his First Amendment speech and carrying a lawfully licensed gun is not a lawful behavior.
Mullin also says 280,000 DHS employees have gone a month without pay. That includes TSA agents at airport security. One airport in Houston says half of its TSA agents have called out this week. Israel and Iran have traded airstrikes today as the war in the Mideast continues. Iran's president confirms Israel killed Tehran's intelligence minister Ismail Khatib overnight. Yesterday, Israel killed another top Iranian leader, the man widely believed to be running Iran, Ali Larijani. Iran has retaliated, firing at Gulf countries and at Israel. NPR's Daniel Estrin reports from Tel Aviv.
After Israel's killing of top Iranian leader Ali Larijani, Iran says it targeted the Tel Aviv area with multiple warhead missiles, also known as cluster munitions. A man and woman were killed in their apartment in Ramat Gan, a suburb of Tel Aviv. The Iranian missile attack also caused damage in other parts of central Israel, including a train station in Tel Aviv. Iran's missile attacks across the region have been the most lethal in Israel, where at least 14 people have been killed since the war started. Israel's military says it struck air defense systems in Tehran and Hezbollah rocket launchers in Lebanon Tuesday, and Hezbollah fired more rockets into northern Israel Tuesday. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
And President Trump continues to raise the idea of the U.S. taking over Cuba. NPR's Franco Ordonez reports Trump says he expects to announce something soon.
Trump's threats come as the 10-year anniversary of former President Barack Obama's visit to Havana approaches, when he celebrated his own agreement creating business opportunities with the island nation. Mark Firestein, who served in the Obama White House, sees the possibility of a similar Obama 2.0 deal.
The contours of an agreement, I think, look a lot like what Obama and the Cubans agreed to 10 years ago, which was basically the Cubans opening up the economy, releasing political prisoners, pledging to ease oppression, and in turn, the United States lifting sanctions.
But Trump rescinded that deal, and his team has signaled they're looking for leadership changes as well as economic changes. Franco Ordonez,
Classical Radio
NPR
Boston
News.
is WCRB-FM 99.5 HD1 Lowell, Boston.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Craig LaMolt. Massachusetts Congressman Lori Trahan asked some sharp questions during a hearing on Tuesday that featured an official with the Federal Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. The hearing was convened by House Republicans to investigate alleged benefits fraud at the state level. At one point, Trahan asked the Center's COO, Kim Brandt, if she knew President Trump gave clemency to convicted Medicare fraudster Lawrence Duran.
Ms. Brandt, do you know who Lawrence Duran is?
Here is sheep.
Well, Mr. Duran pleaded guilty to stealing $87 million from Medicare and was sentenced to 50 years in prison for his crimes. But in May of last year, Donald Trump commuted his sentence. Are you aware of that, Ms. Brandt?
I am not.
Trahan also said that for Congress to do its job investigating Medicare and Medicaid fraud, it needs to go beyond blue states and look at the entire country. Last night's World Baseball Classic was a mixed bag for those watching the Boston Red Sox players representing Team USA and Team Venezuela. Sox outfielder Wilyer Abreu knocked one out of the park for Venezuela's in the fifth inning. In the end, it was the Red Sox pitcher Garrett Whitlock on the mound for Team USA who allowed the winning run in the top of the ninth, and outfielder Roman Anthony who struck out to end the tournament. They'll all be playing on the same team again for the opening day a week from tomorrow with the Sox in Cincinnati, and the home opener is at Fenway on April 3rd. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the William T. Grant Foundation, supporting research to improve the lives of young people. Online at WTGrantFoundation.org. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Hey, it's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM. We are broadcasting live at the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Thank you. On Friday, we're going to be joined for the head of the T, Phil Eng, who's going to take our questions and yours. The Attorney General will be with us on the 25th of March at 11 o'clock, and the Governor will be with us also at 11 o'clock on the 27th of March. Both Campbell and Healy will be here at the Boston Public Library. Hello, Jim.
Hey, before we get started, hello, Marjorie. We've been promised you were to try to give you an update every day on the ongoing battle between the management at the Boston Symphony Orchestra and Andres Nelson's, whose contract was ended after Tanglewood in 2027, and all the musicians who support him. Well, there was a beautiful scene yesterday.
Oh, it was great.
Andres returned to the hall for the first time since his dismissal was announced, and he was surprised. He was greeted by roughly 100 of the musicians in the cold. And all the descriptions
right on Mass Ave, standing on the steps of the symphony, outside. They were all outside.
I know. All the descriptions I've read, Andres gets out of the car, puts his head in his hands.
Yeah.
Everybody is weeping. And it was just another beautiful showing of solidarity between conductor and the brilliant musicians who, as I've said every day, have shown great courage in this whole thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they have been defending him 100%. And there was this great moment where Andres Nelson's joked that when he died, he was going to go to the former great conductors of the symphony, Eric Leinsdorf and Seiji Ozawa, and, quote, tell them what the players had done for him.
That's great. That's great. We're going to give you a much more expansive update because there's a lot of news there tomorrow, but we want to at least touch on that. In recent weeks, Trump has been amping up the pressure on his own party to pass the so-called Save America Act. I'm sure you know what it is. It would require proof of citizenship to register. You'd have to show a voter ID at the polls to vote. It has provisions essentially banning and mail-in voting in most cases, and out of nowhere, his typical vicious anti-trans language there too. And Trump has said if this specific piece of legislation is not passed before the election, he won't sign anything else. And if it is, it could discourage millions from heading to the polls. For Trump, that's part of the appeal.
It'll guarantee the midterms. It'll guarantee the midterms. If you don't get it, big trouble, my opinion. If you get this, your midterms, and they know it. For two reasons. Number one, they won't be able to cheat. And number two, the people are demanding it.
He's half right about the demand. We'll get to that in a second. His whole point being that when he loses the midterms, he's going to say it's because millions of non-citizens voted. Here the fact. Citizenship is already a requirement to vote. Instances to the contrary are really rare and non-issue, statistically speaking. In fact, the people the Save America Act would prohibit from voting are citizens who lack the required documents. More than half of registered voters don't have an unexpired passport with a current legal name. Women have brought this up as a major concern for their eligibility under these proposed new rules. But, this is a huge but, Trump does have broad bipartisan public support for at least the voter identification requirement. A recent Pew Research poll found 83% of U.S. adults, almost as many Democrats as that 83% number, support, quote, requiring all voters to show government-issued photo ID to vote. So here's a question for you all. Should the Democrats cave on this one portion of the bill, the voter ID when you come to vote, and take an opportunity maybe to use that to, one, take the issue away from the Republicans in the midterms, and two, do some negotiating. Maybe say, we'll buy into the voter ID if you agree that ICE agents don't wear masks anymore? Or do you believe that in light of the fact that the fraud that Trump says exists does not exist, Any compromise is just capitulation to Trump, and the Democrats should continue to just say no. The number is 877-301-8970. The topic is the voter ID section of the so-called Save America Act. Where are you on this?
Well, why don't you go first?
Well, ordinarily, my attitude was, in light of the fact that Trump has totally made up this fraud thing, I actually looked this up this morning, the Brennan Center for Justice, which is to the left, found that in 2016, 23.5 million votes that they looked at, guess how many of those 23.5 million were non-citizens?
I would say very few.
30.
30.
Not 30,000, 30. And here's the Conservative Heritage Foundation. They looked at non-citizens voting in U.S. elections between 2003 and 23. They found 24 instances. So ordinarily, my attitude would be, in light of the fact that the premise for this is complete BS, there is virtually no, and clearly not enough to make a difference, non-citizenship voting. Having said that, it's going to be used by the Republicans, used by Trump. The American public, including Democrats, overwhelmingly support it. Give up on it. Not the whole bill, but this piece of the legislation.
Just the one part.
Not the mail-in, not the trans stuff, etc.
You have to show up with an ID when you vote.
Not the proof of citizenship.
Yeah, I think
it's impossible.
That's true.
And trade it for something, or at minimum, show the voters you're being reasonable. Just do it.
Well, there's a common sense kind of thing, and the biggest thing is it undercuts the Republicans' argument. But I think it shows the effectiveness of Trump's lying is that he lies.
You're right
he lies so much that people believe. I mean, confidence in voting is really decreased, and I think that's because he lies about it all the time, but it would undercut one of their Republicans. What are they going to say now? Millions of people got fake government-issued IDs. I think it's going to be much harder. And it doesn't seem unreasonable. You know, we looked up what you already need to show an ID for: hotel check-in, buying liquor, renting a house, renting a car, getting on an airplane, adopting a pet. Boy, I guess they're really cracking down on people who want to do make sure that.
Can I tell you that? By the way, I disagree with you on why the public overwhelmingly supports this. The Republicans support it because they support anything Trump does. I think Democrats and Independents, it's not so much because they believe there's all this fraud. I think it's a practical thing. We have to have an ID for virtually everything else. So why shouldn't you have an ID for this purpose?
I told you, a guy asked me for my ID about 5 or 6 years ago in Brookline when I voted. I was kind of surprised, and then I said, okay, well, I don't have.
You obviously didn't have it.
I didn't. I said,
you have no idea where it was? You have no idea?
It was in my car.
I think that's very unlikely.
I went out to my car to get it.
You had it in your car?
Well, I went out to my car to get it. When I came back, he apologized.
He did?
Yeah, he said I shouldn't have done that.
Jamie just said you actually found your car? Thank you, Jamie.
That's why I have a bright blue car.
Helpful.
It's right there at the library so that I can find my car.
That is, by the way,
few people
for those who think that's a joke, that is exactly why that car is
there. That's why I bought
theirs.
it. Absolutely.
877-301-8970. Again, the Save America Act got a lot of stuff in it. We're not suggesting, because it appears we agree, Democrats buy into virtually banning mail-in voting, obviously not the trans stuff, proof of citizenship, unnecessary and almost impossible. But on this one element, doesn't it make strategic and practical sense to compromise here, or at least offer to compromise and see what Trump and the Republicans do?
The other thing they want to include in this is handing over the voting rolls to the Department of Homeland Security, which has, just as we know, hauled people out of their cars and homes and harassed and abused people all over Minnesota and all over Massachusetts, actually, and all over any place they go. So I don't think we want Homeland Security to have all our sensitive information because they may be surveilling people for all I know. Anyway, 877-301-8970.
Zoe just wrote us a note, our coworker.
Yep.
I worked the polls last September. Training instructs you not to ask for ID. You're not allowed to ask for it, obviously under current law. But the system does have capacity. I didn't know this. To scan a driver's license, which people are often happy to hand over if their names aren't easily found on the login system of the voter roll or that
Good
sort
for
of
you,
thing.
Zoe, working at the polls. That's very
I was
impressive.
thinking about working at the polls.
I bet you were.
I was. I didn't. Okay, by the way, that is the kind of stuff, again, John King talks about it so beautifully. That's part of a responsibility you should feel you have.
And by the way,
in this society, democracy.
In this story, I think it was from the Washington Post, of the 2.6 million Americans of voting age, 1% do not have a government-issued photo ID. 15% do not have a driver's license. I was surprised it was that many, or an official state ID card. But it's not that onerous to get.
Can I No, I know it's not there. I get back to what I said, because this is left out of most of the stories. Trump has made this a high priority. He's threatened Republicans who don't vote for it. The reason he is supporting it, in my estimation, is because he knows it won't pass. And then, again, when he loses, as apparently he's going to do, at least in the House of Representatives, his thing is going to be, in the week before, we're going to lose the midterms because all these non-citizens are going to vote. And he's going to lie like he said. He said millions of non-citizens have voted in recent elections. In fact, single and double digits nationally. That's what he's going to do again.
We know he lies all the time, and he's right. You lie enough, people think the lie is true. And he's been very successful about convincing people that lies are true. Listen to this one. I'm 60 and I get carded at the Packy. Card me for voting. Then when Trump loses, he's got nothing to say. So
there's a vote for the compromise. 877-301-8970. Margot's in one of our favorite places, Hancock, New Hampshire. Hi, Margot. Hello.
Hi, guys. How you doing?
We're good. Thank you.
So number one, I show my license when we vote here. I'm not sure what the difference is, but it's not a big deal, and nobody minds giving your license. But number two, no, I don't think we should compromise with these idiots. They lie. Everything that comes out of their mouth is a lie. So every time we try to compromise, it turns into a big capitulation, and we end up holding nothing in our hands.
Well, except Margot, I want to be clear. I'm suggesting proposing the compromise in return for which they get something. Meaning, and the thing I selected, with no power to do that, is no masks on ICE agents. And if they refuse that deal, then the Democrats can say, we offered a deal for a very reasonable return, and they rejected it. It was in their hands. It's on them. So I'm not suggesting giving it up for nothing, Margot.
What I think is that if we did that and they agreed to it, every ICE agent would still be wearing a mask.
Well, I
don't trust them.
That's a very fine point. Margot, thanks. It's always good to talk to you. Say hi to our friends up there.
Yeah, a lot of the texters seem to be where Margot is. Tim from Lowell, Democrats need to stop compromising every time. When is that worked out? No to voter IDs. Many people don't have one and can't get one due to uncontrollable history. I don't know what that means, uncontrollable history, or cost. I don't think that would cost you that much.
Well, for those who are saying that, and I respect this opinion because ordinarily I'd be with you, for those who are saying Democratic elected officials shouldn't compromise, then you should also be saying they have to do a far better job educating voters as to how this is not an issue. Because when you have, I think the number I read this morning was 70-some% of Democrats, which is a landslide and then some, support this. You haven't done your job telling your own voters why it's not a good idea.
And it turns into an ad. What are the Dems hiding? They don't want you to have an ID.
They're protecting people. They want people to vote who are not entitled to vote.
That's right. It becomes an ad. I mean, the trans sports thing hurt the Democrats last year. I mean, when you have 80% of the public viewing things one way, like they do in this voter ID thing.
Well, can I tell you on that one, I'm not with you, because even though there are very, very, very few, as we've learned, trans athletes, like in college, what we hear, 10, Charlie Baker said or something, that adds to the cruelty of this administration towards a very vulnerable population. That's different.
When we had Alejandra Calabreo in here,
Carballo,
who's a lawyer at Harvard, she gave a great answer on that, and she is a trans woman. Individual towns, individual school systems, they make up their own mind. And I thought that was a very good way to look at it.
Yeah, let's go. Oh, where do you want to go?
Let's go to Rose in Wakefield.
Hi, Rose.
Hi, folks. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller.
We really appreciate it.
And at my age, having seen the Republicans lie, and the Democrats trying to do what's right, and they always get smacked around. Don't give them anything. Really, don't give them anything. Because, like, the last time that they closed the government, Schumer had us all, we're going to compromise on, nothing happened. They lie. So, for me, I know what you're saying. You expect something back in return. You're not going to get anything. Look at their behavior.
Well, Rose, if they don't, let me be clear. I don't find this that complex. If you propose in return we want X, and they don't give you X, then don't cut a deal. I mean, I hear your opinion. And by the way, based on text and looking at the calls that are coming in, vast majority of people agree with you, no compromise. And ordinarily, as I say, that's where not only I am, but where Marjorie is. This, I think, is different, but we respect your opinion. Rose, thanks for the call.
Yeah, I would say we got a no voter ID landslide.
I understand that.
Listen to this. It doesn't matter if it's practical to show an ID to vote. The point is any ID costs money, and so would be a poll tax. All the scenarios where we show ID are privilege cases. Voting is a right. And then somebody said that Trump will restrict what kind of voters' IDs are okay, and they will compromise for nothing. They'll be issuing IDs. It will be.
Well, those are, with all due respect to some of those, are stupid arguments. Obviously, if the Democrats are going to make a deal, then the language has got to be in there. Here's what would stand as a voter ID. Obviously, they're not going to say, "Hey, we're going to give you everything, Trump and the Republicans. You do whatever you want with it." They got to cut a real deal if they cut a deal at all. And by the way, Trump isn't going to cut a deal. The whole point, I think, that Marjorie and I are trying to make is at least show the public that you understand that on some things there's got to be compromise, and when the Republicans reject it, you're on higher political ground. I guess that's. And
I think a lot of people are confusing what we're saying too.
What is it?
Well, this person just texted and saying we're going to concede medical care for trans children.
No, we're against.
Absolutely not. No. The only thing we're not. You want to keep. Not submit to the mail-in. We don't want to get rid of mail-in ballots. We don't want to have the passports and all that kind of stuff. This is just going to get the ID when you go to vote, having some sort of ID when you go to vote. That's it. Everything else is out.
By the way, since you are, I think you would agree with this, the most impressionable person I've ever heard, how soon, we're about 10 minutes into this, how soon do you flip your position on this based on the callers and the texters?
No, I think we're in the unpopular position, but I think, like I said, I think this is more of a common sense thing to people.
By the way, we're in a very popular position. We're in an unpopular position with our listeners.
Well, right.
The vast majority of people.
The vast majority of people think it is not unreasonable to ask for some sort of ID when you go to vote. So, but our listeners, Jim, they're the radical left, I guess.
And by the way, for those who make a totally legitimate point that some people don't have IDs, then reach out in communities and make IDs easier to get for those who don't have them. Help people get IDs, Democrats, if you decide to buy into this thing. Mark in Fall River, you are next. Hi.
Hi, Jim, Margie, love you guys.
Thanks.
Hey, down in Fall River, voter apathy is terrible down here.
I know.
And what I suggest to people is register to vote. Your vote matters. 1 leads to 2, 3. And I have a passport. I have a driver's license. But the funny thing is, if I'm correct on the SNAP benefit cards, there's a photo on of the person who has the SNAP card. But I think that, like, when you get your gas or lights, you got to prove who you are, correct? But I'm against what Trump's doing because they're doing a specific purpose to stop the votes from losing in the midterms. And I love what you guys are doing and keep doing it. You're my relief because I miss my hometown of Boston greatly. Thank you.
Mark, you're a sweet guy. Thanks for the kind words.
In terms of people that don't have a lot of money, you need an ID to apply for food stamps, welfare, Medicaid, and Social Security. So there's as I said, 1% of people do not have this ID. It's not like there's millions and millions and millions and millions. This story had 2.6 million are without an ID. That's not fair.
Also, again, be creative. We learned this morning from Jamie, because one of us, I won't say which one of Marjorie and I, actually has what's that thing called with the gold store? What's that thing? Yeah,
real
one
ID.
of us has a real ID, one doesn't. Who do you think between me and Marjorie has a real ID and who hasn't got one? Exactly.
I do not have one.
So what Marjorie was told, because she happens not to have one, is if you take it and you don't have it, they have to check the system and you pay a $40 fee. Well, then Democrats creatively come up with something where somebody who goes to the poll, who's a legitimate voter, who doesn't have an ID, has a backup, that there's another way to get a lot of. This is not as complicated as people are making it. Clearly, Trump and the Republicans want to use this to preclude people from voting, but at least in our estimation, which is clearly a minority, opposing this is far more dangerous than if your goal is to create some balance in the federal government, than supporting it.
Because despite the facts, we're in a fact
free,
yes, kind of environment right now. The argument would be Democrats are supporting voter fraud.
So can I ask you something I ask you about once every 2 weeks?
What?
When Trump says millions of people who were, he would call them illegal, I'm assuming, non-citizens voted in the last election, in 2020, which is why he lost, when in fact there may have been dozens, and none of those dozens affected an outcome. Does he actually know that he's lying, or is he so delusional that he doesn't know?
We know that the millions who voted illegally in 2020 when he lost somehow did not vote illegally in 2024 when he won.
That is a better
listen to what
answer.
he's saying about Iran. He just lies constantly.
Yeah.
But what's depressing is people believe him. He's saying that they would have had a nuclear bomb ready to go in an hour, basically, is what he's saying about Iran, or a day. That is a total lie.
Yesterday when he said,
and people believe it.
When he said this Joe Kent is counterterrorism person that we'll discuss with Juliette in a few minutes, this guy had said there was no imminent threat and resigned yesterday. I hardly knew the guy. He was a nice guy. Did you see CNN played the speech that Trump gave when Kent's wife was killed, I think in Syria.
Yeah.
It was praising the guy up and down.
Bomber.
And I mean, as you said, every single thing is a lie, or an exaggeration.
And it's again, the problem is that millions of Americans keep believing him, even though he keeps lying. Susan Framingham raised a great point. I agree with you on giving in on the IDs, but none of the examples you mentioned are for the exercise of a constitutional
That's a very good point.
Right, and that is a good point. I mean, Sue has a good point, and
Sue's too.
Sue's.
Yeah,
Sue's. Let's go to Eric in Windsor. What do you think, Eric?
You have a minute, Eric.
That's my time, Jim?
It is. 1 minute.
Okay, so I just want to add to the conversation.
Please.
I don't know why we allow Donald Trump to keep driving all of these different narratives. He is a con man. I am a little guy from Jamaica, and I know that. And I don't understand why the majority of Americans do not understand. The last thing I want to say, when he won in 2020 or whenever it was, I want to know why didn't he say that was a fraud? Also, it seemed like when he win, everything is okay, but once he lose, then, is voters, something wrong with the voting. So that's what I want to add to the conversation. When he win, it's okay, but once he lose, something is wrong with the voting.
Hey, Eric, every time you add to the conversation, you add something wonderful, as you did today.
Well,
thank you much for the call.
It's kind of the million-dollar question. I mean, why do so many people believe his lies or not care about his lies? I mean, last time around it was supposed to be about bringing down the cost of food and living, but that hasn't happened yet, as we know.
Well, hey, the one you got to give him credit. He did stop the war in Ukraine on day one. I mean, really. Who else could have done that?
Okay, coming up after a quick break, our national security expert, Juliette Kayyem, we're going to talk to her about the latest, about the horrible war in Iran. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR, GBH, and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Massachusetts has 26 gateway cities.
Worcester, Springfield, Lowell, Brockton, Lynn.
This year, we're going to get to know them all.
Quincy, New Bedford, Fall River, Lawrence, Haverhill.
26 and 26.
Malden, Taunton, Revere, Peabody, Chicopee.
If you live in one,
Methuen, Everett, Barnstable, Attleboro, Salem, Leominster.
We want to hear from you.
Pittsfield, Fitchburg, Westfield, Chelsea, Holyoke.
Visit gbhnews.org/gateway cities.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Boston Ballet, presenting The Dream, a program pairing Frederick Ashton's Shakespeare-inspired ballet and a dynamic world premiere by emerging choreographer Mikhail Stromae. Opens March 19th. Tickets at bostonballet.org. And GM Roth Design Remodeling, providing custom kitchens, bathrooms, and accessory dwelling units. Their design team works to create living-in-place solutions tailored to the needs of each home and family. More information at gmroth.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Mark Regan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Obviously, we're at the Boston Public Library. Phil Lang, head of the T and temporarily head of the, well, I don't know how temporarily, he's the Secretary of Transportation, will join us for Ask the GM. Any questions you have about the T and Transportation Friday at noon, Jamie? At noon? At noon. We're joined at the library desk by national security expert Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and CNN senior national security analyst. Hey, Juliette, how are you?
Hey, hi, everyone.
Hi, Juliette. Thank you so much for coming in.
Of course.
So, before we get to big picture, just some smaller developments I think are significant in the war in Iran. That the Israelis killed this guy, Ali Larijani, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, who was viewed as someone who might be able to negotiate, more of a pragmatist, to get an end to this, like less rigid.
Yes.
So why did they do that?
I mean, because they basically want to wipe out the strategy for Israel is to wipe out all of the senior leadership, because whatever comes on the other side is of less interest to Israel than basically eliminating much of the leadership. And that assumes that strategy only works if you're Israel, that there's no bench. And I think what we're discovering is not only is there a bench, but that bench could be, depending on who's selected, much more more draconian, less into diplomacy, and basically comes in with an agenda to protect Iran. So I'm not sure.
But that's bad for us.
Yes, of course it is.
So I thought Netanyahu and Trump were like in sync. They
went into
every
the
day.
war. They went into the war for the same reasons, but their interest. Our interests do not align with our interest. Do not align with Israel's anymore. Okay. I mean, because look at what Israel's doing in Lebanon. I mean,
terrible.
Yeah, I mean, they want to create stresses throughout the region. They view those stresses as somehow going to be able to elicit a better neighbors. That could be true, but they've been doing this for a long time, and it doesn't seem to be true. So,
one last preliminary. Well, it's not small, but again, we do want to step back and look at the big picture in a second. This whole thing, where not one of our allies has acceded to the, quote, demands of Donald Trump, who in the same sentence says, I'm demanding they participate, and in the same sentence says, we don't need them.
Yeah.
Seems to me not just to be critical here, but a potential game changer. I mean, at the same breath, these guys are, I think they're all guys. No, they're not all guys, actually. What they're saying at the same time is, no, this is not our war. No, we weren't consulted in advance. And many of them are saying, we can't depend on our relationship with the United States anymore. So it's a whole reconfiguration deal,
lots
right?
of reconfiguration. So this is, look, Trump has spent a lot of time condemning our NATO allies, currying favor with Russia. This is not an instance where we essentially can demand or should expect NATO support, because we weren't attacked. That's the Article 5 only comes into play. Article 5, which is basically, if
when
one
one's
of the
attacked,
the others do, which has only been invoked after 9/11. So
in support of us.
In support of us.
Right.
So he isolates all of Europe, then starts a war with no input or coalition building by Europe or with Europe, and then says, whoops, who would have thought that Iran would close the Straits of Hormuz, and is asking for help. They're all saying no. So that's one dynamic there, because what Trump always forgets is these leaders have their constituencies too, and you're not gonna risk their military for an effort and an agenda that we still don't know why we went in, and we certainly don't know what the game plan is to get out. Go across the ocean or across the continent. And the Gulf states, it's unclear what they want at this stage. They've been wavering between wanting Trump to essentially end this, but also not happy with the economic impact of what this war is doing. So, all of these countries are going to be relevant in the future, as is China and Russia. So would have been helpful to think this through, but we are stuck where we are now.
The next thing we were going to ask you was about this guy, Joe Kent, who I'd never heard of, was the counterterrorism guy who resigned yesterday saying there was no imminent threat, I can't support this war. Before we ask about him, let me bring up something about his boss, his soon-to-be unemployed boss, I think, probably, Tulsi Gabbard.
Yes.
Here is her written, a portion of her written opening statement, which is rather stunning. She's testifying this morning, I should say. Here it is. As a result of Operation Midnight Hammer, Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated, meaning last year. There's been no effort since then to try to rebuild their enrichment capability. The entrances to the underground facilities that were bombed have been buried and shuttered with cement. Basically saying, obviously, there's no imminent threat. Yeah. Well, guess what she did not include in her opening statement when she spoke? The paragraph that is in her written opening statement. And Senator Warner said, why did you not read that portion of it? Was that because the president says there was an imminent threat? She said, well, time was short, so I chose to skip it. And Warner said she skipped it because it obviously contradicts the imminent threat thing. So there's that. There's this Joe Kent character. Does that matter or not at all?
I mean, it matters to the extent that Kent's resignation, which was based on, for two reasons. One was that there was no proof of imminency, which is absolutely true, and Tulsi Gabbard does confirm it in her tweet last night. Did not say there was an imminent threat. It simply said the president gets to decide what an imminent threat is. So it was based on that. So that is what all the intelligence is telling all of us, that this is a made-up imminent threat, that the Speaker of the House and others are trying to say they were a day away from, a nuclear war. It's all just lies because they can't figure out what narrative is going to hold. But the second. And then the second piece why he resigned was because he said that we were led to this war by fake intelligence by the Israelis. Now, so what's interesting about Ken is he's showing both fissures on the MAGA side that this war has exposed for Donald Trump. One is...
He's an election denier, by the way. He's not some anti-Trump character.
Yeah, he's a total, like, okay. I mean, no, we're not sorry. I mean, he is just reflective of the MAGA wing, which is both anti-intervention, which is where Tulsi Gabbard comes from. She used to be that way. And then the other is anti-Israel or very, very critical of Israel. He has courted Nazis in the past or Nazi sympathizers in the past. I don't know if he's anti-Semitic. I'm not going to use those words, but certainly his criticism of Israel does not come from a place of protecting Israel. So we take it for what it is, but I think overall, take a step back, that is where MAGA is right now. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's now no longer in Congress, is part of the why are we in this war? Like, and it makes no sense to his side because he had promised no wars, and this is a Middle East intervention, which by all accounts is only going to get worse for us.
By the way, Tulsi Gabbard, again, his boss, and we just read through the scamming she's doing this morning. I didn't realize till last night on your network, CNN, that one of her primary fundraising vehicles when she briefly ran for president in 2020 were T-shirts which said in big letters, "No war in Iran." Yeah. That was her.
I didn't know that.
No
That's
war
great.
in Iran.
I mean, it's no war. Period. Not even a planned war. Not even a. It's just this is a nightmare that the Trump administration has gotten the world into, and with no hint or no sense of how it's going to be unwound. We're probably going to be dependent on China to do it, which is not a sign of strength. If you wanted a sign of strength, this is not it.
Well, there's a lot of talk about, Iran not having a nuclear weapon, obviously. Yeah. But I guess a lot of the nuclear materials, what is it, Mount Isfahan or the Pickaxe Mountain or something, there are these canisters supposedly buried underneath there. And what you're reading and hearing now is that to get those canisters would be extremely dangerous and would require boots on the ground.
Of course.
And I'm wondering if that's why these Marines are on their way there?
I think the Marines are more likely there because there'll be some sort of boots on the ground in one, if any, of those islands that line the Straits of Hormuz to sort of take over and then defend the Straits. We don't know yet. I mean, the president probably likes the idea of having a bin Laden type raid that Obama got lots of credit for.
Yeah.
And the idea, I think, is that you would definitely have to send boots on the ground. You'd have to send boots in the air, or, people in the air everywhere, because one has to assume that it's highly fortified by the Iranians. And then the assumption is that the canisters are still there, that all the canisters are there, and in the process of extricating them, nothing bad happens, and you don't kill all of our soldiers with radioactive material.
Or a nuclear
this is
reaction.
Right?
Yeah.
These are the raw materials. So back to Tulsi Gabbard, what did we do last year? Like, did we actually eviscerate it? Or is it, they can't even get that storyline straight. I think Trump wants this story out there because he likes the idea of a bin Laden type raid. He's so jealous of Obama all the time, and saying former presidents called me to support this war. I mean, look, if you met a normal person on the street who said that, and you knew that wasn't true, I mean, you would be worried about their cognitive capability. But he just spews, one of the former presidents called me, and all of them said it wasn't us. It's clearly him. I mean, he clearly talked to himself. I'm the former president, and therefore I support what it is. But the exit strategy for Iran, and I'll be here talking about it, is Cuba. That's the exit strategy for Iran.
I mean, what? Do we have to spend our time taking Cuba?
That's the exit strategy for Trump.
But one last thing about this nuclear stuff. I didn't know this, but apparently I've just learned that this is from the New York Times, that the Iran's foreign minister agreed with Jared Kushner, who's our big negotiator, that they would allow inspections of their nuclear material. They wanted to leave it in the country, but they were going to allow inspections, as they did under the Obama deal, where they would come in and inspect it. But Kushner said no, that wasn't good enough.
Because he hadn't gotten enough investment from the Saudis yet in his company.
$3 billion.
That's why he needed more time.
I don't know. That would seem to be better than we are now.
The general reporting from our British in particular from the British allies who were in the room, but from much of the reporting that has come out, is that Kushner and Witkoff, Kushner being the son-in-law with no government position, and raising money from the Middle East as he's doing this, and Witkoff, a former business real estate dealer, is that they literally technically did not understand what the Iranians were offering. They did not understand the difference between raw materials and manufacture, all the whole chain of production that goes from the raw materials to a nuclear weapon, that the Iranians were offering a deal. This is coming from Western reporters, not from the Iranians, that were offering a deal that was better than what Obama got, and longer. I think Obama's original deal was 15 years before Trump ripped it up. And that those negotiations were going to restart on the Monday, but then the intervening factor was we started bombing that weekend. So they were to meet that Monday. So the Iranians and everyone else in the room leave thinking we're heading towards a deal. Witkoff and Kushner with the Israelis, because there's no question that their narrative was the same and being told to Trump, which is it would be quick, the threat was imminent, the Iranians are not offering anything to us, and you need to bomb. And that is what Trump bought.
Juliette, we only have a couple minutes left. Of all the wrong predictions I've made, which is every prediction I've made, but this one is the most consequential, I was 100% convinced that when gas prices went up as much as they already have, approaching $4 nationally, when the stock market, already today it's down 460 points or something, dropped, that was the day that Trump says we're out of here. And I meant that seriously.
No, I thought it too.
But obviously I was wrong, at least so far. So what's the Havana? What's your Havana, Cuba thing that he says, what does he say? It's now up to the people of Iran?
Yeah.
We have to take...
Yeah.
Is that really what you think he's going to do?
I think Trump is likely, it seems to me Trump and certainly Rubio are talking more about Cuba now than they are talking about Iran, because there's no good news out of Iran. Now, look, things can happen.
They can also get something out of Cuba, it seems to me.
Very, very quickly in the Middle East. And so maybe, something happens that is good for our soldiers and our economy and everything else. But in the absence of that, you break and run. I mean, Marco Rubio and Donald Trump's theory of diplomacy is break it and then run.
But hold on.
And then, and so Venezuela, all of it. So,
but we're almost out of time. Really quick though, the military's done a great job getting rid of the Navy, ballistic missiles, all that kind of stuff. But the big problem is the nuclear weapons. And
the Strait of Hormuz is a big problem,
Well,
too.
that is. But in terms of annihilating people, it's the nuclear weapons.
He'll say it's obliterated again. What are you talking about? It was obliterated last year.
This isn't about the nuclear. This isn't about the nuclear anymore. The question right now is, where's the pain threshold for both Trump and the Iranians? I tend to think the Iranians have a higher pain threshold. They're willing to suffer because they've always, because they don't have accountability, or is higher than Trump's pain threshold for what's happening now. I'm like you. I thought it would happen earlier. We'll see. But this has nothing to do with nuclear weapons anymore.
But I think in a lot of people's minds, the fear is a nuclear
Marjorie,
weapon.
he will lie, as you said, for the first half hour of the show.
But I think it's a little harder to lie the second time around when he's claimed it's obliterated once. Obviously, it's not. They're claiming it again.
I'll say I really didn't mean it the first time. This time I really mean it.
Okay.
Cuba.
Well, if people buy that one.
Bye, you guys. See you later.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you, Juliette Kayyem.
Thank you, Juliette. National Security expert Juliette Kayyem. I know. I like to talk about nuclear weapons. It's like, napalm in the morning. Former Assistant Secretary of Homeland.
He has absolutely no idea what he is doing and putting the whole world at great risk.
Juliette is Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Barack Obama, Faculty Chair of Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Coming up, after this quick break, we're going to have our transit panel here. Talk about the World Cup, more money for the MBTA, for the city as well. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. Listening to BPR, GBH, and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Tune into The Culture Show for daily discourse on the arts and culture scene, and join us for what is a continuous conversation about the state of the arts with the most interesting thinkers, innovators, and creators in the region and beyond. From the poets to the painters to the power brokers who hold the purse strings. It's all here on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Brightbound, helping students as young as middle school identify their strengths, explore their passions, and navigate a path to a rewarding career. Learn more at brite.bound.org. And Rockland Trust Bank, committed to helping individuals and local businesses work towards their financial goals by providing financial advice and resources. More at rocklandtrust.com. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC.
Welcome back to BPR, GBH, and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. A bunch of Ask These, where you get to ask people questions. Phil Lang, head of the T, and more is Friday. Attorney General next Wednesday. Governor next Friday, all three at the library. Joined now at the library by semi-regular transit panel, Chris Dempsey and Bill Straus. Chris is former Assistant Secretary of Transportation for Massachusetts, currently of the urban planning firm Spec Dempsey. Bill Straus, former state rep, who served as chair of the Transportation Committee on the House side. Chris, Bill, good to see you both. Thanks for being here.
Great to be on.
Our pleasure.
Thank you both for being here. So Chris Dempsey, story out of the Globe, Samantha Gross, talking about the Mass Democrats in the House have released this new budget with a lot of money, many millions for the cash-strapped, we always call it the cash-strapped MBTA. Is this going to make them uncash-strapped, or is it not enough?
More than their deficit, right?
Yeah, well, I hope it will for at least 3 or 6 months or so, and then we'll probably be back to the legislature and to Bill's former colleagues who are taking some of those votes today. Look, I think investing in the T is a great use of public dollars. It does not just benefit the riders of the MBTA. It benefits the businesses that are served by those riders or that have employees who are riders. It benefits everyone who drives because it takes cars off the road. It benefits everybody who breathes air because our air is cleaner because there's less congestion and traffic. So these are big numbers, hundreds of millions of dollars, but I think they're being spent in a good place. And I think the general manager and secretary, Phil Eng, has inspired a lot of confidence in the legislature and in the public that the T is on the right track for the first time in probably 2 decades.
Is that the same legislation where they're adding another $10 million to the World Cup thing? It is, right?
Yes, it is.
Is that a good invest? I mean, by the way, we had Mayor Wu here the other day, who I have to say, I asked her specifically because her answers were like, I'm going to strangle somebody. And she didn't say those words, but it seemed to me like that's what she was thinking.
They do sound more like your words than hers.
They are. So is this a good investment, or are we going to, after June, say, boy, did we make a mistake here?
Well, I think it's important that Massachusetts always, when it gets the opportunity to host major events like this, does a great job.
But we're doing it on the cheap, even with this additional $10 million, aren't we?
Well, that means the state commitment is now going to be $20 million because $10 million came earlier. The request originally, I think, was 27.
37.
20 seemed appropriate. But that's also separate from other sources of money, we hope, that the event generates for the 7 or so events that are going to be held in Foxborough. So I think, plus the separate agreement that the Kraft Enterprises entered into with the town of Foxborough. They cut that right to the line yesterday. So I do know that the transportation planning for the World Cup is, from the people I talk to, a huge number are coming in by commuter rail. The T will also have backup buses of their own if anything happens with the trains.
What, to get them to the thing?
To go to the event.
Well, look what happened the other day, though. They had the big soccer thing with the women. They had 1,400 people on the train, and people backed up for hours on the highway.
You know, this ties into all the events maybe we'll get to discuss today. When I talked to some people about that yesterday, after hearing you guys talk about it yesterday, I found out that the staffing over the weekend for the events was designed for what they typically get for the men's team, the Revolution, of about 10,000.
Yeah.
30,000 people showed up for the women.
I loved it.
Which means they were overwhelmed. But this probably helps that other Mayor Wu issue of the White Stadium, that maybe it's a benefit that the women's soccer team is going to play this season at Foxborough, because they'll get a sense of the market, how many people tend to go to the games, and to the extent people in the area of Franklin Park in Boston have concerns, and I know they do.
Let's get to White Stadium in a second. Can I say there's a word for those people who thought they're going to be 10,000? They're called dopes, is what those people are. You're the Mr. I mean, when you were a little boy, I don't know if you remember this, you were part of a 3-person group that led the opposition to the Olympics. You remember that far back?
I do. Kelly and Liam.
Yes, indeed. Yep. Kelly and Liam, and you. Are you a World Cup pro guy, or are you? I mean, obviously it's a different kind of deal. It's 7 specific dates. It's not quite as, well, whatever. Were you pro this investment?
So I have the same reservations about getting in bed with FIFA that I did about the IOC. These are both corrupt organizations. They care only about themselves. They have no transparency, no democracy as part of their processes. But everything that's happening with the World Cup is 2 orders of magnitude smaller than what would have happened with the Olympics. So am I happy about $10 million effectively going to support FIFA? No. But I'm happier about that than $1 billion going to support the IOC, which is what would have had to happen if we hosted the Olympics.
Okay, so that's a perfect segue to, you wrote a piece a couple of years ago, in between the Olympic opposition and now, in 2024 in Commonwealth Beacon, saying, I'm going to part ways with my fellow author. You and Andrew Zimbalist from Smith wrote a book, which I did the
forward. Had a great forward,
by the way.
Book,
thank you. About the whole Boston Olympic thing. And you said, I'm going to part ways with Zimbalist. He had a great op-ed in the Globe about a week or two ago saying even today this is a horrible, White Stadium, horrible deal. But you wrote a piece saying I'm separating from him in 2024. It's transparent as opposed to other kinds of things. And you cited the $50 million city investment, which is now $135 million and likely more with change orders down the line. You still think White Stadium is a good investment?
Well, I am concerned. I am concerned with the cost, and I think it's not surprising that there are cost overruns. I said in that piece I expect cost overruns, but this is a significant number here, 100 plus, maybe $130 million, and as you say, maybe more than that. And I don't actually necessarily disagree with Professor Zimbalist on the economic case, which is we should be cautious as much as I think many people are excited about the Boston legacy and what it will mean for pride in the region in terms of the actual economic impact. Most of those dollars would have been spent in other entertainment in Massachusetts, and they're just shifting there. But I'm still going to go to games, and I'm going to bring my daughter to games. The difference with White Stadium is that White Stadium has been, frankly, a problem for the city of Boston since the 1980s.
That's true.
Mayor Flynn was the last person to invest any money into it, about $8 million. That was before the Americans with Disabilities Act. So it has not been accessible. There's not even ramps, not to mention elevators, so that people can have the dignity of sitting in the stands or having a wheelchair in the stands, number one. So then you follow that history and you see Mayor Menino trying to deal with this problem. He proposed that he enter in a public-private partnership with Northeastern University and that Northeastern's football games be held at the stadium. But then the Board of Trustees at Northeastern axed the football team. So that went out the window. Then John Fish came in and said, I'll take private dollars and we'll invest in White Stadium. That never happened. Then Mayor Walsh said, we don't have the money for this. All of a sudden it became tied to the Olympics, and all of a sudden Mayor Walsh wanted to throw any amount of money at it. But what I'm saying here is that no one has been able to solve this problem, and I think the mayor had to be creative. The theme you see through those ideas, whether it's Northeastern or John Fish, is that the city has recognized it needs a private partner to do this well, and I think that's how and why the mayor landed on the women's soccer team.
I wanted to hear what you say about their transportation fixes that are proposed, because we had the head of the Emerald Necklace and someone from the NAACP that both opposed it. We didn't talk so much about the transportation thing, but there's no parking at the stadium, and they're talking about valets for bicycles and parking permits and whatever. What's your take on the big picture and then on the transportation fix?
So there is a proposed transportation plan that the city has put together, and it's gotten mixed reactions from some of those groups and some in the community immediately around Franklin Park. And it has to do with the number of buses, the how to stage that, how many people, 4, 10, or 11,000, because they'll be maxed out by the size of the stadium, can come and go to an event within a window that is 2 hours before a game and must be done an hour after, 20 times a year plus practice sessions. And so there's more planning that has to happen, and that is tied up in what is still, as was reported in a column yesterday in the Globe, still a pending case, legal case.
Supreme Judicial Court still has the case.
And no one can predict these things, but that case could send the city back to some of the planning drawing board having to do with parks and the state constitution. So there's planning to happen here, but as Chris has identified, everybody agrees or has in the city for decades that White Stadium needs to be fixed. That park has a lot of facilities. It's important to the community immediately surrounding it. And that is one issue distinct from how do you get it done. How do you get it done has brought in a professional sports team. And with the costs and what so far, and this is kind of the surface of the article in yesterday's paper, these big capital projects, if they go sideways, when they go sideways, tend to be revealing about the chief executive. And that's the second issue. I think that's playing out for Mayor Wu.
Well, let's hear what's your position on the chief executive and how she's handling this.
Well, it seems to be that even people you disagree with, you really have an obligation to talk to. And there's rumblings certainly out there that this is being pushed. Who's right, who's wrong? I'll leave that for others. But certainly,
well, he wrote that there was great transparency even through 2024, didn't he?
Better than the Olympics, although that's not saying much, right? Because that was the least transparent process we've ever seen.
Okay.
I just want to finish at this point. What I've found over the years with these big capital projects is rather than the chief executive, in this case the mayor, defining the project, over time sometimes these projects begin to define you. That certainly happened with the Big Dig, also locally. Some of us remember what happened to the mayor of Newton at the time with the high school project where the cost doubled and the state
they called it the Taj Mahal.
Well, let's hit the bottom line here. Should we be doing it or not?
Look, I say do it, but there may be more planning. There may be ideas from the community members. And what I think the mayor has to be careful of is that how she handles it becomes more of an issue than just whether she does or not.
But that's separate from whether it should be done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think you ran in the primary for Oath, so you know a lot about electoral politics recently. When I brought up something that I thought was pretty relevant the other day to the opponents, they both rejected it. Even in the precinct in which where White Stadium sits, people voted 4-1. They weren't voting on White Stadium, but they're voting for a mayor who supports it, a candidate, Josh Kraft, who had it as one of his two major issues, bikes and anti-White Stadium. And it was a crushing victory for Wu.
Yeah.
Do you not think that has some relevance to popular opinion?
I do. Democracy matters as much as I sometimes don't like the outcome, including in my own race, right? But I think she has a mandate to continue the broader themes and thrust of her administration. She has met with the opponents. She doesn't agree with them, but she's heard them out and heard their case. And I will say, I respect and I honor the people who are opposing this. I'm reminded of myself opposing the Olympic bid, even though I come out on a different side of this. Karyn Brodek, who's the executive director of the Emerald Necklace Conservancy, a wonderful nonprofit leader, someone that I admire. Ed Burley, I don't know him, but he was very eloquent on your show.
NAACP, yeah.
Clearly a leader in the community. And then there's citizens who oppose this too. I would say one difference that I've seen is with the Olympics, the more that, and this was very clear in the polling, the more that people learned about the Olympic bid, the less they liked it. At first, they were excited by all the glitz and glamour and the shiny images, and then they learned about the taxpayer guarantee. Then they learned about the requirements.
About the taxpayer guarantee, you mean?
There was not a
taxpayer guarantee.
Yeah.
They learned that taxpayers had to sign a guarantee to cover the cost overruns in the Olympics.
Okay,
in the Olympics, they learned about having to build all the venues at potentially public cost, and we have not seen that in the polling here. The polling has shown that White Stadium is generally a popular idea with City of Boston residents, even though this debate has been going on and has survived an election cycle.
And I just wanted to alert you, if the state Supreme Judicial Court decision suggests under this provision of the state constitution, Article 97, on parklands, that there are parkland issues to be reviewed and approved, approval in that case goes to the legislature with a 2/3 roll call vote, which, given their calendar in these even-numbered years, means by August 1. So,
may I laugh in response to that
we'll
deadline?
Be dead. In that case, we'll all be dead before there's any White Stadium
here's the
built.
Point.
That would be my guess.
The next White Stadium will be being built at that point.
The mayor has relationship issues with the state Senate, if I could call it that, including within her own Boston city delegation. And so if White Stadium ends up being a legislative matter,
that's another year of delay.
So wait. You just raised something. We only have a minute left. You're a legislator. You're a politically sensitive. I know you were a big shot in the legislature. Would Massachusetts not be better off if last Sunday was the final St. Patrick's Day breakfast? Tell the truth. I mean, is this the most embarrassing political spectacle in a grown-up state like Massachusetts.
I never attended once.
Okay,
Excuse me. It's not just the St. Patrick's Day breakfast. I've lived here all my life. I think the legislature is an embarrassment. I mean, what are they doing up there?
I can't believe it took you that long.
And I'm sorry that you were there for all those years, but it's just the fact.
Actually, I have to say, he's somebody who had the courage to stand up to leaders.
I'm not criticizing you,
no,
but
just,
it's basically. I mean, we're the worst legislature in the country in terms of our effectiveness, are we
maybe
not?
we should get rid of the legislature and keep the breakfast. How about that?
Get rid of the legislature, keep White Stadium, or maybe they should all play soccer in Everett. How about that idea?
Next time we'll talk.
Maybe should they go to Everett? What do you think, Chris?
Sure, we love Everett.
We'd love to Everett. Maybe they could go to Everett, Jim.
Okay, nice to see you both.
There'll be no
Bye.
fixing White Stadium, I guess.
Take care. Be well.
Anyway, we have been speaking with our transit panel, Chris Dempsey of Spec Dempsey Urban Planning Firm, and Bill Straus. He was up at that legislature for a very long time, Bill Straus, but he's out now. Thank you very much
for
coming in. And he was chair of the Transportation Committee then. Thank you very much to those listening up at NEPM. We're going to continue here in Boston. Up next, we're going to talk about the cost of the war. You're listening to Boston Public Radio.
Coming up, you'll hear something on GBH News that just wouldn't be possible without listener support. So, while you're listening, consider pitching in $10 or $20 a month as a GBH sustainer and help make it all happen. Give at gbhnews.org.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Riverstone International US LLC, located in Beverly, Massachusetts. A Riverstone International company acquiring legacy insurance globally since 2010. Learn more at rsml.co.uk. And M. Steinert & Sons, celebrating the 173rd anniversary of Steinway & Sons this March. Their Newton Piano Gallery offers new and used grand and upright Steinway pianos. More at msteinert.com/March.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Speaking of the tea, we just talked about the tea. The head of the tea, Phil Lang, is going to join us on Friday to take our questions and yours. The Attorney General will be with us on March 25th at 11, and the Governor March 27th at 11, both at the library. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there. So we're now 3 weeks into the war in Iran and beyond, and what the so-called Operation Epic Fury will end, no one knows. Not even the guy running it. And like the Iraq War of 20 years ago, which was also a war of choice with no imminent military threat, the costs of this war go well beyond what we read in the paper every day, the $2 billion a day as a running cost. That's according to a Boston Globe op-ed written by our next guest, Linda Bilmes, a co-author of the $3 trillion war with Joseph Stiglitz. That was about the cost of the Iraq War, and budgeting and public finance lecturer at Harvard Kennedy School. Her next book, The Ghost Budget, Paying for America's Wars, will be published in the fall. We hope she'll join us then, but she joins us now on Zoom. Linda, it's great to see you again. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to see you, Jim.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us, Linda. But before we get to the Iran war, you wrote about the Iraq War, kind of knocked my socks off. Tell us how much that cost.
Well, the Iraq War cost about at least $6 trillion. Using a slightly different methodology, my friends at the Cost of War organization place it at $8 trillion.
And one of the reasons I think that we don't think about is you talk about this in terms of the Iran war as well. Veterans getting hurt, their costs, the cost of replacing all this military hardware and stuff. Tell us why it ends up costing so much.
Well, I think that right now you see the focus on the very short-term kind of costs, which are the cost of operations, and there have been costs prior to this in terms of the operations we did taking out Iranian nuclear facilities last June and with the Houthis in May. But over the long term, there are very significant costs, above all the cost of taking care of veterans from these wars. And if you look, in fact, at the U.S. financial statements, which are produced by the nonpartisan GAO, I mean, we owe $7.3 trillion, not billion, $trillion in veterans' disability benefits alone for veterans from previous wars now. So right now we have about 50,000 U.S. troops who are stationed on ships and bases and other areas in the theater of Iran, and a large percentage of them are being exposed to toxins, contamination from the blowing up of fuel facilities and oil facilities. So they will become eligible for, under the PACT Act, which grants veterans disability for things that are disabilities, respiratory problems, etc., that are incurred due to this prolonged exposure to toxins, which are benefits that are, although low on a monthly basis, but for the rest of their lives. So all of those promises add up, and as of now, we don't have any funding set aside to pay for those. In addition, there are all kinds of other long-term costs. There's the replenishment of stocks and reset and repairs. There is the borrowing and paying interest on the borrowing.
Don't gloss over the borrowing. Can we stay on that just for a second? Be clear. We have not budgeted for this war, correct? We are borrowing to pay for this war, yes?
We are borrowing to pay for this war, and I have to say that this is a huge difference between current wars and previous wars. So the United States in the War of 1812, the Spanish-American War, Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, we raised taxes and we cut non-war spending. That's how we paid for wars, in addition to, in some cases, some borrowing. Since 9/11, we borrowed all the money for the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and we are borrowing all of the money for this war.
Linda, what is currently, what percentage of the federal budget every year goes to interest payments on the, what is it, $38 trillion or whatever our national debt is? How much do we pay in interest every year?
We are paying 14% of the budget on interest, and we are actually paying more now on interest than we are on defense prior to this war.
So 14, just so people are clear, 14%, one out of every $7 of the federal budget goes to something that buys us absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing. It's like paying interest on credit card debt. It buys you absolutely nothing. And we got to this point because we paid for $6 trillion of war in Iraq and Afghanistan at a time when interest rates were very low. So we borrowed all this money, and now interest rates have gone up, and anyone who has ever watched this happen with a credit card bill can understand this. And now interest rates have gone up, and so the percentage of our budget that we have to pay on interest is become very, very high.
So let me just, if I can again, I open this by saying most of us fix on the $1 to $2 billion estimates per day, the short-term costs of the war, which some of us think are huge, but they pale by comparison to what you think the ultimate bill is. What do you project is the, if this thing were to end, it's 3 weeks, if it were to end in another 3 weeks, what would the title of your book be about the cost of the Iran war?
Well, I'm not sure that I have the book for that yet, because one of the costs, which is too early to tell, are the huge economic costs.
Yeah.
We don't know yet what the impact will be over the long term on energy costs, on shipping costs, on insurance costs. And some of these costs are just emerging now. For example, the United States has gone into the reinsurance business, with Scott Bessent announcing a $20 billion reinsurance facility, which can easily go up. That means that we are buying up insurance from insurers that are, for good reason, frightened to insure ships going through the Straits of Hormuz.
So we're going to pay for the insurance. The United States taxpayer is going to pay for that insurance instead.
That's right. The United States taxpayer is paying to backstop insurance on something that really is very difficult to insure.
You know, just some of these numbers I saw, I mean, I was stunned. This is from a New York Times report that says the first 100 hours of this operation cost $3.7 billion, the first 100 hours. And congressional hearings revealed the military used up $5.6 billion of munitions in the first 2 days of the war. And then I read some final story, I forget where I read it, about the Gerald Ford, the battleship that's out there, that a lot of the military people are stationed on, that it's in such bad shape. They had that terrible fire, and the sailors were putting out the fire, inhaling all those awful fumes, and that the toilets don't work half the time. So we've got this kind of rusty battleship out there. I mean, it just didn't paint a very inspiring picture, I guess, of the state of affairs.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Marjorie, and I think that many of those who are serving in the military, many of those who are my students and many of those who I know would say that our first priority should be to ensure the safety, security, and well-being of the troops.
Yeah.
And right now, as I said, we have not set aside funding for long-term veterans care. We have veterans hospitals across the country that are in bad need of repair, and we are spending money, a huge amount of money, on very expensive missiles to take out very cheap Iranian-made or Russian-made drones. So that the sort of asymmetry of where we are spending money, even within the military context, is striking.
So is your piece, and so is your work. Linda, as always, we really appreciate your time and your contribution. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you again soon, particularly when your new book comes out.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much for joining us. We much appreciate it. It was very sobering to read about all these many billions of dollars.
Iraq War,
thank you.
Close to $8 trillion is the latest toll. $8 trillion.
We have been speaking with Harvard Kennedy School Public Policy lecturer Linda Bilmes, the co-author of The $3 Trillion War. Her next book, The Ghost Budget, Paying for American Wars, will come out this fall, and we can speak to her again when it does. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to change gears here. Boston Globe love letters columnist Meredith Goldstein is here. And apparently it's now become embarrassing to admit you have a boyfriend, and a bunch of other love stories, including someone who said they've never been loved. Oh my gosh. I'm Marjorie Egan, Houston Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH live from the BPL, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, we're nearing the end of Ramadan, the month-long holy period where Muslims practice fasting during the day. The practice of abstaining from food has roots in more religions than just Islam. Today, we ask a rabbi, a reverend, and a Muslim chaplain, why? That's the Curiosity Desk today at 1 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering short courses on critical topics led by world-class faculty. Professionals can get up to speed on AI, innovation, cybersecurity, and operational strategy. More at executive.mit.edu. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing coverage plans for individuals, families, employers, and retirees with benefits that help you live in your moment. More at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org.
Welcome back to BPR on 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browder. We're live streaming youtube.com/GBH. This should be an interesting segment, because all I just heard when Meredith walked over here is
Exactly. We're going to get to that in a minute.
We'll find out what that was about. We're now live at the library. We're joined by phone booth expert Meredith Goldstein. You'll understand that in a second if you don't already. She's the Boston Globe love letters columnist and host of the Love Letters podcast. Hello, Meredith. How are you?
So happy to be here.
So happy to be here,
you.
too. Well, give us the update on the Boston Public Library phone booth.
Which is right there.
Yeah,
we
it's
can
great.
see it. Yep.
Yeah, so last time I was here, they had just installed a Love Letters phone booth that is massive. You will not miss it if you're coming down Boylston Street, where you can come inside. It's an old school payphone in a phone booth, and you can pick up and it dials straight to Love Letters. So whereas I'm not picking up and talking in real time, you can leave a message, you can hear the podcast, but most people are leaving messages with their questions. And it has been a riot. It has been moving. It has been so much more earnest than I thought it would be. Within a week, we'd had about 500 messages or more.
Wow.
So I don't even know how many there are now. And it ranges from people coming in. Well, they do this. They come in and they say, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't really have a question. Then there's a pause. And then they say, okay, here's what I've been thinking. and the topics, it's like friendship, marriage, moving to a new city. It's been really phenomenal.
The friendship, we're going to talk about friendship with our listeners after you depart, but the hiccuping person was about friendship, right?
That was adorable. Because I need to say, when I get letters to the advice column, I'm reading them. Yeah. I'm not hearing voices. So I've started to wonder about my bias when I hear a voice. If somebody seems really sad, I don't want to hurt their feelings, right? So but one woman went in and hiccuped. She said, I have the hiccups, but I want to leave a message anyway. So she's telling me this very fraught problem about friendship while hiccuping the entire time.
What was the fraught problem?
Really, the question was about spending a life where you don't cultivate friendships and you've prioritized other relationships. So I thought that was really interesting because I had just been interviewing a scientist, a researcher who thinks about relationships, and she said some of the most, the worst assumptions we make are about people who don't have friends, who maybe just have a romantic partner. So
yeah, and we have a story all about that.
Yeah, so it's just the questions range from so deep to so silly. One in particular from a week or two ago, someone was talking about dating a man who sleeps inside of his duvet cover. I want you to picture this for a second.
What?
I know everybody in the room was just like, what? Okay, this woman gets on this phone booth phone and says, Meredith, is it a deal breaker if the person you're dating opens up the buttons, right, where you normally put the...
Opens the buttons?
You know, where you like...
Well, how else do you get in?
You have to, right. And it's like, it made me think of it's like a sleeping bag. They're using... And... Yes, this is weird, maybe. I actually have now done a lot of investigative reporting in my own office about, does anybody here sleep in their duvet cover? And I cannot find anyone else. But then I thought maybe we all should be sleeping in our duvet covers. It sounds kind of comfortable.
What did you say to this person?
I haven't answered this question yet because I do want to get into the history of... this, to me, I was like, wow, this is not a question I ever thought I'd be asked. Yeah. But it did make me think of different traditions you have, and when a partner does something in a way that you don't. This goes back to the age-old question of, do you spend a lot of money on your toilet paper? Do you spend no money on your... Do you get? Do
you want help with this?
Yeah. What do you think?
How many of you here sleep in your duvet cover? Be honest. About half the audience, give or take.
This is not true.
Yeah,
no, you're all like,
nobody
sleeps in their duvet cover. But I love that the question was asked. So I am just loving that. That felt like an old school Ann Landers question, and we get all kinds.
Can we go back to the friend thing for a second?
Yeah.
Because we are going to talk to listeners.
Later.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is to make clear what you said a minute ago. This person was in a really good interpersonal one-on-one kind of relationship.
Yeah,
so it's not like one of those people. Encouragingly at all. I mean, it's sympathetically. Who has no friends, no relationships, whatever. Focus on. So, what advice did you give her?
Well, I just thought, we often get questions from people who have a lot of friends and have spent most of their life single, but they can't find a romantic partner.
Yeah.
And if you find a romantic partner, somebody who can also be a best friend, and you have great family, there's less of this inherent need for community. And this was somebody who had coupled up really young, had multiple relationships that perhaps were right after the other. I personally thought that this person was writing in insecure about this because they've now coupled up with someone they describe as the love of their life, and they're probably getting to that point where they're planning weddings. Suddenly you need a wedding party. Like, we do this thing when people have romantic rituals where we have them parade all of their best friends, and the best friends make speeches. Well, what if you have one friend? What if you have two? What if you have none? Is that okay? And my advice was, this is not easy. You have to make as much of an effort for friendships as you do dating sometimes, especially as an adult. But also, I think it's okay to need one person or have a sibling that's a very close friend. I just think that sometimes we...
Like your sister.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, I say this as somebody with a real best friend sister, but... we have to work at it. And so I was challenging her to, she says she likes her office mates. Invite them over. Do all the things you did when you were dating.
Do you subscribe? I assume you do to that. We had Zeke Emanuel here a couple of weeks ago after he wrote, what was it called? Eat Your Ice Cream or whatever the hell it's called. Eat Your Ice Cream? Yeah.
Health stuff.
And he had 6 rules. He may not call them rules. 6 things about, not living longer, but living better while you're alive. Number 1, by a long shot, was social interactions. I assume you're a subscriber.
It's incredibly important, and I think it's important for these strong ties and these best friends, and also I think community weaker ties. I think we get a lot from human interaction, and no shock to anyone. I always try to get the checkout aisle with somebody that I can actually say, have a nice day to, just to really, limit my computer interaction. But I don't think we need it in big numbers. A lot of people are happy with just like 3 friends, 1 friend, and that's okay. But we have to put in the effort. Even after you make them, these are relationships that require maintenance.
We're talking to Love Letters, Meredith Goldstein. I forgot to ask you very quickly, how long is that thing going to be there?
As far as I know, it's through the spring, maybe a little bit into early part of the summer. So you've got plenty of time, but I highly recommend going in there. I just... when I tell you some of that, what I am learning a lot is about the library. Who comes in here? Because to come in here is how to use the phone booth. The number of college students from 3 to 5 p.m. who are really stressed out. The number of high school students who come in and say, my friends are doing things I could never imagine doing, am I left behind? Parents who are worried about being detached from their children.
Wow.
It's the time of day really changes the problem.
Do some people come in purely to use the phone booth rather than they're at the library?
I don't know, because I promise I'm not spying on people who do this. So
Okay,
I'm not
fine.
watching
Okay.
it from behind a book stack. But I think some people are brought in by the look of it from outside. But it's taught me a lot about the library.
Yeah, a lot of kids here in the afternoon.
Yeah, I was desperate to have a phone booth here because I thought these are people who are already curious. They're going to the library. And I'm right? The people who come in here are on their way to get a book. They're studying for exams.
Yeah.
And they're tourists. A lot of people are like, I'm from Chicago. We had a lot of kids call me on New York's senior skip day. They had all come up to Boston,
great.
and they were like, one young woman was very concerned about calculus and how she was doing, and that I cannot help her with. I cannot help her with calculus.
Can none of the rest of us. Go ahead.
So here's a tearjerker. I wanted to ask you about this because it really was sad. Somebody that wrote in and said they were older, they'd gotten divorced, the husband didn't love her, and she feels like...
She's 65, she said.
Yeah.
She's 65 and said, my husband didn't love me. How can I get over this sadness about never having been loved? My first thought was, you're only 65. I understand people have very different experiences and could be, having different issues at 65. But all of the commenters thought this person perceived their age as much older.
Yeah.
But I also just thought, you don't know. Sometimes we tell ourselves a story about relationships when they end, like they never loved me. We're very
people say that.
We use this language that's like it was all or nothing. And I'm quite sure over a long marriage, everybody loves each other a little at some point, and maybe everybody despises each other a little at some point. So you don't know if you were loved, and you don't know who's been longing for you from afar. So I just feel like. I was hoping to give this person a more positive spin.
You did. Talking about the different kinds of loves and stuff. I just felt bad for this person because to think that no one has ever loved you is tough.
One thing I told them was that for the number of letters we receive about crushes and people just saying, I wish this person noticed me, someone has had a crush on this woman.
That's right.
Someone's had a crush on all of us. It's kind of a delightful thought, even if we didn't know it.
One of my favorite podcasts was when you got the guy and you had a crush on in college, I believe, that you fantasized about right behind you, and then and then you actually called him up with the phone. It was great.
Yes, that was a fun one.
So before we get to what we really want to talk about, which is Shantae Joseph in a couple of seconds, this whole thing where a woman, I think they're both artists, if I remember correctly, and they care about experiences. We learned this from Michael Norton at Harvard Business School. Experience is much more important than things to most people. And so they decided to save money because things aren't that important to it. Lab-grown diamond, whatever that is.
What is
for
it?
a wedding, rather than a, quote, real diamond, which would cost a lot of money. And her sister, whose values she respects, says he doesn't value you as much as he should because he won't get your real diamond. My advice is shut up.
Right. No, I agree. This letter, I am not a good person to ask about rings. I just don't know a lot about them. But for a person to write in saying my ring that my soon-to-be husband and I have chosen, I just felt awful. And it was a story about, class that she was telling. It was a story about values. And you're allowed to have different values than your family.
What is a lab-grown diamond?
I have Marjorie, have been wearing the same earrings for about 15 years that I bought in the teen section of Nordstrom for $5.
Okay. Yeah.
I assume they're diamonds grown in a lab, but I would not know the difference.
Maybe cubic zirconia or something?
I think
the fake ones?
I don't know. I have a friend who writes about weddings for the Globe, and she was very upset about this letter. And she said a lab-grown diamond is beautiful and fine.
Fine, and if they're happy, really shut up.
Okay.
Get out of here. Okay, we're going to play a little song for you that you mentioned in a piece to sort of get us in the mood. Can we play that song, please, briefly?
Is having a boyfriend embarrassing now? Maybe it is. No, it isn't. I don't know. Is having a boyfriend embarrassing now?
Is having a boyfriend embarrassing now? So tell us, for those who don't know, who Chanté Joseph is and what this is all about.
Chanté Joseph is a writer in the UK who wrote an essay for Vogue last fall, and the headline was, "Is having a boyfriend embarrassing now?" And Chanté's question was, she's 29, by the way, and she sees on Instagram straight women she knows, and they're starting to obscure their boyfriends in photos and their fiancés. Like instead of the picture of here's me and my partner, it's maybe just like a hand or the face is cut out. And she began to notice that younger women were starting to feel shame about being in a traditional heterosexual relationship. Why? Maybe their boyfriends are literally embarrassing them. But more likely, it's because there's a culture of, wait, do we even want to do these old models? Do we feel like, people are saying, oh, well, I'm married to a man, but our division of labor in the home is fair. They don't know how to say they're an exception to a rule of something they do not like in terms of the history they've seen. This is a really deep statement that she was making, which is, if you're a straight woman, do you not want to be a part of it? And to me, in my late 40s, reading the essay written by a woman in her late 20s saying, we want to do this differently, but we're still dating men. What does this look like? Was important. And so I did a 2-part podcast series about why women might be embarrassed, even by having the best boyfriend ever.
By the way, we should say her essay was huge.
The essay went
huge.
The essay went so viral, and that song you just heard was a European artist writing a song about the essay. Yeah. This really hit a lot of young women who feel like they're betraying themselves by just having a boyfriend.
Because they're giving up too much of themselves, or because they should be standing on their own 2 feet?
I think it's just
Jim.
like it feels to them, especially some of it is also the landscape online, right? When you talk about this misogyny, this sort of incel culture, what you don't want to show, what you don't want to show is this connection to anything that could be that. So whereas maybe it used to give you clout to say, here's my male partner and here I'm coupled in this way, there seems to be more clout in a different generation of, I'm just out here on my own. And by the way, this was a 29-year-old observation. My own friends are taking a picture of a tree at this point and putting or they're not posting at all. So she's also talking about a generation of people who living and posting are much more aligned.
Okay, I'm a Meredith Goldstein Uber fan. I listen to all your podcasts. I even love your sister, and I'm glad she likes her pajamas nice and soft. But this next one about the woman who hid.
Wait, before you get that, we're leaving this already?
Well,
what's the name?
It's part 2 of the boyfriend
Okay,
thing.
go ahead.
So I wanted to.
She hit her husband.
She hit her husband.
Yeah, she hit her husband.
HID, not HIT.
That's right.
So the first episode we did, I spoke to Chanté Joseph, and she told our podcast listeners, here, basically what I just told you.
What's the name of the book she read? The Tragedy of Heterosexuality.
Yeah,
by Jane Ward.
Right,
it is
by
a
Jane
tragedy.
Ward. Yeah,
Okay.
Right, so she's trying to figure this out as a young woman. What is the life I want, and how do I not fall into it? How do I enjoy men without falling into a trap? Yeah. What is the story I tell about myself? The second episode, I wanted to find a woman who has been embarrassed by her boyfriend, regardless of the quality of person that they are. And Yowei Shaw is a former NPR host who hosts the podcast Proxy, and I was talking to her, and she said, that essay headline really reminded me of the time I hid my husband. And I was like,
poor guy.
What now? And she talked about a period. The short version is
You know where she hid him? In the duvet.
Right, that's just stick them right in there.
That's right.
They're for husband. They're for husband.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Marjorie.
It's a good callback. She has always been a bisexual woman. She made that more known at a certain point, and then very quickly met the man who would become her husband.
Right.
A wonderful person, the love of her life. Years into their relationship, as they were getting married, she thought, this is still a part of my identity I want to have as part of my identity. And she started trying to find a queer community that could be her people. So it was a part of her, no matter who she was married to. Well, she finds these new great friends, and she feels like, oh, well, Kyle is kind of in the way of this look I'm trying to create, this picture I'm painting. So she'd say, Kyle, go out and do something else.
Get out of here.
Get out of here. Because my cool new gay friends are over, and it's like not that cool to have a husband over. And she didn't say it that way. She would, just say, hey, I'm going to spend some alone time with my friends. And at some point, she found out that these new friends were wondering, why is this woman so mean to her husband?
Exactly.
So the very people she had tried to impress, she was alienating with this horrible behavior. So on this episode, she really talks about, this is a very nuanced take of why she was embarrassed. And she apologizes to wonderful Kyle. And it's really hard. I think people have been a little hard on her in this episode.
Very hard.
How awful that she hid this person. But I think... and I say this as a straight woman who doesn't know, but having a queer identity in a culture that sees you with a man as a woman was a difficult thing for her to carve out and figure out. And where did she belong and what did it mean? She'd also been told early in coming out by women who only like women, oh, you're not really gay. So that was a traumatic thing that sort of led her to feel like she had to do this in a certain way.
But I just want to make sure I'm not missing some big cultural change here. A lot of women are bisexual, right?
Oh, yeah.
So why did she feel like she couldn't? She married a guy. Would she pick the wrong team? Was that the problem?
I think there was a feeling that with new friends that she did not look the part that that people were going to say, oh, you say that, but here you are married to a man, looking a different way, behaving a different way. And I think that's it's all rooted in misogyny, right? Because I've heard this sort of homophobia and or biphobia, like denying a part of somebody's identity because of the partner they happen to have chosen. So this is just, what I hear from so many storytellers on our podcast, but truly it was validating of the openness of these people that they were like, we'd love to meet your husband.
I know.
Can I tell you something's going on here? This is analogous to when we used to have the guys from what's the home thing called?
Home Depot.
No, not Home Depot. This old house from all the time.
Oh.
If you didn't listen to the show then, every time they're on, Margie would do something like, oh, there's an emailer who wants to know about ice dams. And she didn't want to say, I have an ice dam. What's going on with you that you're asking all these questions about?
I just found it.
Nice try, Marjorie.
I found it. I didn't like her. That was basically it. I didn't like her. And I thought this guy sounded like such a nice guy, and I thought I just felt she was making.
And do you have the guy's number? That's what Marjorie was basically
Well,
said.
I think also what a thing to remember is she was figuring this out. 2020 is now 6 years ago, if you can believe it. She was younger, and I think it's hard calling back all the way to the person who didn't really make friends. When you figure out who you are in life fairly early, or figure out a routine, a circle.
Yeah.
You don't get to explore everything, and you don't necessarily always have the maturity to know how to deal with it. So there was this almost arrested development part of her that didn't know how to live in the world as a bisexual woman. She barely had time to do it.
Okay, so she's still married to Kyle?
She's still married to Kyle.
Good.
He's lovely, and he's often on her podcast. So she went from hiding him to saying, world, meet Kyle.
Yeah. Poor Kyle came home and she was shunted up. He had to hide in the attic for the entire time. She had her friends over.
Can I ask you a question? When do we have the people from Home Depot on? Was I off that show? Did I miss?
It was a very special episode.
It was
a
I was
very
on vacation that week or something?
Yeah, it wasn't Home Depot. That was the wrong name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Meredith, good luck with the phone booth, which is
Yeah, come.
fabulous.
Everybody here needs to go
Very
in and leave
exciting.
me a juicy
right
problem.
There.
Yeah.
Meredith Goldstein, it's great to see you.
Meredith, thank you very, very much. I'm obviously very invested in all your podcasts. This is the problem, Meredith. I get very upset if they don't turn out like I want them to. Anyway, we're speaking with Meredith Goldstein, columnist of Love Letters fame at the Boston Globe, where she also hosts the Love Letters podcast. The Love Letters column is great. The podcast is great, and obviously I'm a big fan. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to open the lines to you about friendship, making friends in adulthood. Is there something wrong with you if you have no friends? Ways you can find friends if you are concerned that...
You know where you find them? Home Depot. That is... You go find somebody in one of those orange outfits, you are golden. Trust me.
I am Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
In the aftermath of Vietnam and Watergate, Martin Scorsese captured a country coming apart through Travis Bickle.
You talking to me? You talking to me?
I'm Jared Bowen. For our next Wednesday watch party, we're revisiting Taxi Driver, the film that turned one man's isolation into a haunting portrait of America. Ride along with us and call in to share how this classic film resonates 50 years later. That's on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Windhorse Counseling, believing care is a shared process. Their counselors work with clients of all ages to help create space for reflection, creativity, and balance. Learn more about their team at windhorsecounseling.net. And Mass General Brigham. In heart surgery, expertise matters. Mass General Brigham Heart and Vascular Institute performs thousands of surgeries each year and is committed to research and innovation. massgeneralbrigham.org/heart.
Welcome back to BPR and 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're streaming youtube.com/GBH News, obviously, at the library. Phil Lang from the T joins us here for an hour to take your questions on Friday. We're going to end the show by picking up where we started with Meredith a couple of minutes ago. Why does it feel so hard to make friends as an adult, and how have you done it? We're going to try to perform a little bit of a public service in the last few minutes here. If you're lucky enough to have an in-person work situation, you might try asking a colleague out for coffee or dinner, Meredith suggests. But we want to open this up to you. Have you made platonic connections with people in your adult life, not college friends or friends from earlier in life? Maybe you've taken up what a caller to the show recently referred to as stabby crafts. You know, sewing, knitting, needlework, meet up with like-minded people, do them together, third places. Maybe you've set up a booth like a lot of people have at Home Depot. And of course, I'm really
That's where I
stuck
hang
on
out
this.
every day right after the show. I go right over to Dorchester.
For the men in the audience who consider their closest friend to be that one guy they drink next to at the sports bar, you can actually try physically turning to face that person and asking them a personal question, heaven forbid. Why does all this feel so hard these days? How have you found your way out of the isolation? How have you made and fostered friendship in a divided 2026? In all seriousness, if you've been successful at this as an adult, we want you to give advice to people who've been less successful at a really important thing. As we said, these social connections, according to Zeke Emanuel, Meredith Goldstein, all these experts, is the critical thing to a happy and fulfilled life. What are you laughing about?
Somebody just texted us and said, Marjorie seems to be very interested in learning how to hide Jim. That was a good one.
That's very funny. 877-301-8970. Your experience finding, keeping friends as an adult, or not finding them. And if you're seeking advice from other listeners, maybe we can have them give you something. 877-301-8970. Do you have a secret for people?
No,
or
I don't. I don't have a secret, but there's a couple of interesting things here. They say that men do better in shoulder-to-shoulder friendships than face-to-face friendships. I don't know if you think that's true.
Those are just referred to. You don't even turn towards them.
But play golf, or go fishing, something like that. Go to the game, watch the game.
Yeah.
But you had a kind of a touching situation yesterday with an old friend. Maybe you'd like to share that story you told me.
I don't know. I thought it was going to be touching. So this woman who I used to work with on a campaign many years ago, it was actually a good friend of mine, calls and says, "Do you have time after the show?" And I thought it was so nice. It was out of the blue. She came to the library, sat down with me, And she's working on a huge project that I can't disclose. And I thought she was coming for advice. She wasn't calling for advice actually at all, coming for advice at all. And so I turned to her at one point, it's just yesterday, sitting right on the bench there, and I said, "Why are you here?" And she said, "Well, to be candid, I'm visiting a lot of friends because I don't want to have regrets if I haven't seen them before they're dead." And I said, "Do you know something I don't know?"
Yeah, I guess you're in thin ice,
And
Jim.
I thought she was joking, but she was not. She wanted to make sure that before I expired, not that I'm planning on doing that anytime soon, she made contact. Having said that, she's been a close friend of mine for years and years and years. You know what the key thing is, by the way, which I'm not so good at least semi-regular communication with those you are lucky enough to have in your friendship loop is really critical. And she's much better at that than I, by the way.
Okay. The people I know that have lots of friends spend a lot of time cultivating their friendships. I have one friend, I call her people collector. She's unbelievable. She knows everybody, everywhere. And she's,
but you've known her for a long time.
My friend Ann.
Ann.
From Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh, I know Ann, yeah.
She told me she spends about an hour and a half every day either catching up, calling,
she can
emailing,
really talk,
texting.
by the way.
She's great. And no matter where you go, everybody likes to hang around with her. And she's got friends. So she really...
yeah, but that's not the kind of person who has trouble collecting friends.
No, she's a people collector.
She doesn't have... For those who don't have those skills, you know what you got to do? You got to go... You can't bowl alone. You got to go literally and figuratively bowling. You got to go to third places, and you got to take chances. Don't you think?
They say a lot of us need to be more aggressive about our friendships. That we need to call, text, and arrange plans with people. You have to be persistent about it. And there's also a bit of advice which I thought was interesting. That whenever you find yourself just thinking of a friend, you should call that friend, even if you only have 5 minutes. About them, so that made me think of people I should call on the way home today.
Do you plan on doing that?
Yeah, I might try that. But you know, I don't.
By the way, let me just say it. There's zero chance. Not because you're unkind, because you're the kindest person I know.
I do have some friends, Jim.
No,
I do have some friends.
I know you have a lot. But most of your friends, in fairness, we're going to get to your calls in 2 seconds, I promise.
Yep.
Most of your friends, I have no friends from centuries back. Almost every friend I have as an adult friendship was formed as an adult. You have high school friends.
I do.
You have college friends. I mean, that's a wonder. But that's a tribute to you and them for fostering that through the years.
Well, I've met your friend. You have a friend.
I have a friend or two.
I've met him.
Yeah, I have a friend or two.
He's a great guy.
Well, I have the woman who one knows is going to be dead in a couple of weeks. Yesterday. And by the way, I have found generally if you...
someone wants to know if the friend that came to visit you yesterday, Jim, was named Harriet Heinemann.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
We're still waiting for Jim to get in touch with Harriet Heinemann. Julie in Providence, thank you for calling.
Okay, Julie. Hi. Julie, hello. We're talking about friendships, sort of, I guess.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, Julie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfectly, yep.
Okay, great. Well,
Yeah.
I love you guys. I listen to you all the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
While I'm driving.
Thank you.
And I had to pull over on this one because I seldom call in. But, I moved from the North Shore of Boston to Providence about 4 years ago and really knew no one here. And actually, I have to say, Marjorie, I'm like you. I have friends from college and friends from high school that I'm still in touch with. And it happened that my college roommate was visiting, and we were just coming out of the pandemic. And she'd been there a week. I think she's getting bored with me. And she said, "Why don't we have a party? And then we can find." And so we did that. And it was sort of random, and a few people might not have come because they thought it was weird because they didn't know me. But eventually they came, and they started coming on a regular basis. So, and people that I didn't even know would show up at my door with a bottle of wine. And I have so many friends in Providence now, I have to say. And it's just, it's like that tag thing. Friends of friends become your friends. And so, the full moon. I have to say, sorry, Jim, no men allowed. I did try to change that at one point, and everybody didn't even let me finish the sentence.
Who can blame them?
No men.
Julie, I want to get this straight. So you organize parties generally when the full moon is coming? And is it a potluck so people bring their stuff?
Yeah, full moon lady in my neighborhood. Yeah, I'm the full moon lady.
And do you do a potluck so you don't have to spend like a week cooking?
We do, yeah.
That's
really
great.
bring
Perfect.
something, and that wasn't something I have to enforce. You know, when you have a community like this, everybody's willing to.
This is another one. When Marjorie asks 11 questions of a caller, you know, she's looking for an invite or she wants to emulate. Julie, that was great.
I want to do a full moon. I want to do a full moon party.
By the way, Zoe's in. She just
You
texted.
are welcome anytime,
Thank you.
Marjorie. Just don't bring Jim.
Zoe is really into this full moon deal too, so if you can do it. By the way, anonymous texter says the friend who visited the library yesterday knows how much liverwurst Jim eats. She's hedging her bets.
Yeah, there
and
you
by
go.
the way, a common friend of ours just texted and says, I meet them at the Raw Bar. So there you go.
There you go.
Nothing like a Raw Bar as a venue to meet new people.
You know something? I think you were a different man since you started hanging around with that particular friend that you go to the Raw Bar with.
It's not so bad.
I think it's become a very good thing for you, Jim, and a very good thing for him, no doubt. You know what's a good thing?
No.
I wish I was in a walking group. A lot of people I know, I used to, or you can be in a running group too, but it's harder
Where
to
did
talk.
you get that idea? I'm just curious. Where'd that come from?
People I know, a lot of women I know are in walking groups.
Okay.
Yeah, they meet and they walk around Jamaica Pond at 6 o'clock in the morning, or they walk someplace else. I think that's pretty neat because you can talk while you're walking and work on all your problems. A little bit more difficult to talk when you're running. But
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Because a variation on this, I asked the person we're talking about. I have another friend who I've known for, I don't know. Well, actually,
you do?
I know from the time I was in New York
you
City.
had another friend.
You actually know this person fairly well, but I'm not going to name names.
Yep.
And I texted him twice in 2 days about something, and he didn't respond. Now, what's your take on that?
That's everyone's great fear.
And by the way, the
isn't
purpose of that was I haven't seen him in probably 6 months, and I was thinking I'd buy him a drink or something because I actually had some headaches, but not horrible headaches. And he didn't respond in 2 days. And what's your reaction to that?
Well, you think there's something wrong with you. He doesn't like you.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what you think.
And that's probably true, right?
I don't know. I don't know, but I think that's everyone's fear that the reason the person doesn't text them back or call them back because they don't want to have a drink with you.
I want to speak
this is a mystery person. I didn't know
Yeah,
there
you
was
do know who
a
it is.
second friend.
I'll tell you in a second.
I only heard about one friend.
Well, the other one wanted me to make sure she saw me before I was dead. That was
right.
the third.
But she's an acquaintance. She's not really a friend.
No, she's actually a very close friend.
She doesn't think of it that way.
So, let me just say this. One of the reasons why friends were so hard for me early in my adulthood, as you know, I don't like being on the telephone.
Yeah.
And when you engage someone on the telephone, unless it's a business thing, it's very hard to end it. Texting is one of the great developments in friendship because it can be a rather terse but warm. I know maybe that's oxymoronic. Do you understand what the point I'm trying to make?
Yeah, but you can't. Sometimes the emotions involved are difficult to gauge.
Yeah.
Here's somebody who has 5 children under 11, so their ability to have a friendship is kind of difficult. I don't have time to do anything, says this person, and I think that's absolutely true. You got 5 kids under 11, man. You are not having much time.
That person should write to Meredith. Let's go to Karyn in Sagamore Beach. Hey, Karyn, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good,
well, thank you.
I have a friend, an older friend, and she said, it's difficult to make friends. But she said, this is the thing. I've got 5 close friends, Mary, Jane, Liz, Lee, Nicole.
Yeah.
If you want to be my friend, one of them has to move away, die, or somehow be incapacitated so that I have time to have another friend.
Wow.
I just have to be friends.
Wow, you're busy.
But that's a problem of an excess of riches. That's not a horrible problem to have, is it, Karyn?
I don't think so. She has good friends, and they get along well, and they have a good time. But, the question is, why can't I make friends in an older environment? Maybe just people aren't open to it,
Well, that's one of the theories that it's easy to make friends when you're kids or you're in college or in high school because you're hanging around, and then it's harder when you have a family, and then it's harder when you're middle aged, and probably even harder as you get older. But thank you, Karyn.
Karyn, thank you. By the way, here's a note from Zoe, our coworker. Texting, great development for Jim's friends, worst development for Jim's coworkers. Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
True.
Oh, here's a Jay from Jamaica Plain. He says he's made adult friends via a singing group in community choruses and 12 step groups. Oh, like AA. Are you supposed to? Can you hang around with other people from AA?
I actually don't know the
I
answer to
wasn't
that
sure
question.
if you could or not. But
By
I
the
think
way,
that people that go to regular meetings have made great friends at those meetings, whether they're supposed to or not.
Did you read this about the Walking, Talking Men chapter in Boston?
No.
Men meet up in parks to walk and chat together. GBH News Instagram has a reel of this in action. Walking Talking Men is a national movement for men to create real, lasting local friendships in our own neighborhoods, one walk at a time.
That makes total sense to me. You go, you walk, you get your exercise in, and you talk to people because you're not breathless like when you're running. I know.
You know what I also do that you don't do, by the way, and you're much better at friendships than I. I have those sort of quarterly, sometimes 3 times a year dinners with the same 4 guys. Let's say 3 times a year, 5 of us, kind of thing.
Yeah, I want to start a women's dinner. I've been trying to do that for about 5 years now.
Well, you know what you could do? You could do the walking group on the way to the dinner.
That's right.
And then you could all go to Home Depot on the way home.
Well, someone said what they did is they called up a friend and said, let's go to Target. And they went to Target. But the problem is we're not supposed to go to Target anymore. Aren't we supposed to be boycotting Target at this particular moment?
The LGBT
so I guess you have to go to Home Depot instead of... Are we supposed to be
I don't know if we're boycotting Home Depot yet. Isn't the owner blank? Didn't he do something? Did he do something that's a problem? Can you look up whatever his name is? Not Mel Blanc. He was
an anonymous texter
Arthur
says,
Blank.
Get a dog. It's the best and easiest way to meet friends. And that is really true. I know a good friend of ours who met her husband-to-be at the dog park.
Who's that?
Her first name is Monica. I'm not going to tell you.
Oh my God! Do you know? Speaking of, this is not Friends, but it's a variation on a theme, but it would work for Friends. You know, when my father, after my parents were divorced, my father, who had virtually no interest in me, nor I in him, I should say,
which explains a lot,
would parade me around in Atlantic City, which is where we used to go, kind of thing.
I know why.
To pick up women.
Pick up women.
That's honestly, it's the only reason he did it. Was to pick up women.
Men with children alone at the park.
Yeah.
It's a big pickup.
He was thinking of renting a child to be able to pick up women, actually.
A texter wants to know if you want to join them at Market Basket after the show, Jim.
Actually, I've met a lot of acquaintances, not deep friends, at Market Basket.
But don't you find when you're babysitting your kids' dogs that you have a much...
Because you talk to other people with dogs.
That's how I met most of my neighbors when I had a dog, and I got the dog again this weekend.
Harry P., best dog from C to C. Oh, your kids' dogs.
He's no other with us. I'll be getting the one that never stops, Jack Russell Terrier.
You complaining about that too?
No, it's just a lot of...
Sounds to me like you might be.
Yeah, a lot of activity with the dog, and the dog comes over.
Allison in Boston.
Hi, Allison.
Hello there, Allison.
Hey, I'm at Home Depot. I'm kidding.
Hi, Allison. What's up?
Hi. I wanted to say I joined an app called Time Left.
A what?
Time Left.
It's an app called Time Left. It's a weird name.
Oh, okay.
Work really, but you set up a time every Wednesday. You have the option to have dinner with 6 other people that you don't know.
Oh, wow!
You can choose the age group. Usually, the app chooses from your interests, and you meet them, and you kind of decide. You know, it's kind of fun. And I've made one friend from it over the past year.
Well, before you go, by the way, Jamie has written Time Left. That's what the friend visiting Jim yesterday was worried about. I thought of that, too. Wait a second. That gives me hives.
Wow.
To go out to dinner with 5 people or 6, I don't know. How did you do it?
This. Users fill out a personality test, and the app matches them for a weekly dinner in their city. I think that sounds great.
Were you not anxious doing this? Or how were you doing this, Allison?
I was the first time, so I got there early, which I never do, and it wasn't. I mean, it was interesting, you know, to see how people show up, who they are. You decide who you resonate with, who you don't.
Wow.
Yeah, it's an interesting experiment, Jim. You know, and it pushed me beyond my boundaries.
That's great.
And everybody
that was great,
pays
Allison.
shares the cost of dinner. Everybody puts their own money down for dinner.
Yeah, I mean, you pay a fee for the app for a month or 3 months, and then you pay for dinner.
You have a great voice, Allison.
So we have a lot of ideas. Thank you very
Allison,
much. We have Time Left. We have a walking group. We have, what was your idea?
Home Depot.
Home Depot. Okay. Or Market Basket, Jim. Anyway, thank you very much for all your suggestions on friendship and for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Thank you to the people that came down to the Boston Public Library.
Why they all came? They wanted to make sure they saw the show before you know what I mean?
Died?
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Or check out the TikTok page
Knock
of
on
Boston Public
cardboard.
Radio. Tomorrow, Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Young is going to join us. Former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety Andrew Cabral. We're going to talk to her about whether the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court maybe has had enough of Donald Trump. We'll see.
It's not based on a case. It's based on something he said.
A thing he wrote.
Yeah.
Environmentalist Bill McKibben about how, we wouldn't have to worry about gas prices if we had done more on renewable energy. Anyway, and GBH's Jared Bowen. Thanks to the crew, Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our executive producer, Jenny Bologna, our engineer, John the Claude Parker, whose 13th anniversary with the show is today.
No.
Happy anniversary,
Well, wait a
John
second.
the Claude Parker.
And long before the 13 years, we were lucky enough
That's
to
right.
work with John and our former.
That's right.
John is the greatest, period, and we both think that. We love you, John.
Special thanks to BPL staff, Maddie Guy, Bill Francis, Juan Jose Cadenyar,
Thank you.
host of the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. Stay tuned to the Curiosity Desk with Edgar B. Hurk III right after us here and the Culture Show.
Excuse me. I meant to say, I will be signing autographs in the Pliers department at 3:15. I wanted to get that in.
Okay.
Bye. See you
Jared
tomorrow.
Bowen's watch parties at 2. Thanks
Bye.
for listening. Bye-bye.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, How Did We Get Here's, how-tos, and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Explore New England. This original documentary film series explores the region's great outdoors through a variety of activities, including camping, biking, paddling, and skiing. Available on YouTube and Roku or explorenewengland.tv. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds. New properties are added often. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
What do Winnie the Pooh, religious devotion, and raw eggs in your coffee have in common? They're all a part of the show on today's Curiosity Desk. I'm Edgar B. Hurk III. We begin with the bear. Pooh isn't just a lovable cartoon, he's also a symbol of Chinese politics. We'll get into the creative ways that dissidents skewer dictators online and the cat and mouse game these tactics unleash across the internet. Plus, Ramadan only has a few days left. Lent still has a ways to go. We ask a Christian and Muslim chaplain why fasting is a part of religious rituals. And if you're not fasting, we'll serve you up a cup of egg coffee, whisking that emulsified protein right into your morning joe. Sounds gross? Our experts say they're gonna convert you. It's all ahead this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. More than 30 years after the Mexican-American civil rights and labor leader Cesar Chavez died, several women are publicly accusing him of child sexual abuse, assault, and rape. The New York Times has published the findings of an investigation in which a number of women identified in the article have gone on the record for the first time in accusing the revered civil rights icon of sex crimes. They include one of his most prominent allies, Dolores Huerta. She tells the Times that he forced himself on her twice and that both times she became. The paper says it was able to corroborate two women's accounts of child molestation and rape. The Times conducted interviews with more than 60 people, including Chavez's top aides, relatives, and former members of the United Farm Workers Chavez co-founded. The Senate's holding a confirmation hearing for President Trump's nominee to lead the Department of Homeland Security. Senator Markwayne Mullin says he wants to steady the DHS, but the hearing began on shaky ground. Rand Paul, the chair of the Senate committee that decides whether to advance Mullin's nomination of the full Senate, confronted Mullin over past remarks and questioned his temperament. Mullin fired back.
Sir, I think everybody in this room knows that I'm very blunt and direct to the point, and if I have something to say, I'll say it directly to your face. If you recall, back in my House days, we actually did have this conversation because of remarks that I made.
Iran's threatening attacks on oil and gas infrastructure in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. That according to Iranian state media, which also reported earlier today that facilities associated with Iran's offshore South Pars natural gas field came under attack today as part of the war. Qatar shares the gas field with Iran and blamed Israel for the strike. In the U.S., the Federal Reserve is expected to hold its benchmark interest rate steady today. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the Fed is caught between rising energy prices and a softening job market.
The price of gasoline and diesel fuel has jumped sharply since the U.S. launched its attack on Iran 2.5 weeks ago. Even before the war began, inflation was running stubbornly higher than the Fed's target. That makes it harder for the central bank to cut interest rates, even as the job market shows signs of needing more support. Over the last 6 months, the U.S. economy's added virtually no jobs. Jerome Powell is nearing the end of his term as Fed chairman, but the timetable for confirming a successor is up in the air. A key Republican senator has promised to block confirmation of President Trump's nominee, Kevin Warsh, until the Justice Department ends its criminal probe of the central bank. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 436 points, or nearly 1%, at 46,558. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH newsroom in Boston, I'm Craig Lamolt. Worcester officials say they're preparing to reach a settlement that could involve paying the town of Holden over $30 million. As GBH's Sam Turkin reports, the payment is a penalty after Worcester overcharged Holden for using its sewage system.
Holden pays Worcester to route its sewage south to a treatment plant. But in 2013, the town accused Worcester of slapping on unnecessary fees, and a jury agreed. Worcester appealed the verdict, but multiple state judges sided with Holden. Now, both communities say they're negotiating an end to the dispute, and Worcester's freeing up more than $35 million for a potential settlement. Worcester officials say it's unclear what impact the payment will have on residents' sewer bills. Sam Turkin, GBH News.
Senator Elizabeth Warren is rejecting accusations that Democrats are to blame for TSA agents going unpaid. Warren says Republicans rejected a separate funding bill for TSA, while the debate about ICE tactics holds up funding for the Department of Homeland Security.
ICE being able to wear masks, to be able to pull people out of their cars and throw them to the ground, be able to shoot people in broad daylight with no accountability, that is not helping reduce lines at the airport. We want to reduce lines at the airport, then let's fund TSA, and Democrats are willing to do that.
Warren says Democrats are holding firm on refusing to pass any funding bill for Homeland Security until Republicans agree to significant changes at ICE. Mostly sunny today, but cold, highs in the mid to upper 30s. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include United States Postal Service, dedicated to putting reliability at the core of USPS Ground Advantage to help businesses operate smoothly. More at USPS.com/Ground Advantage.
You're listening to The Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. As that well-worn phrase goes, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. And sometimes milk tea is just milk tea, a delicious drink. But other times, it's a symbol of a transnational movement pushing back against authoritarian regimes. And occasionally, Winnie the Pooh isn't a cute philosophical bear, but instead is a way of skewering authorities in China. With us to explain this and discuss how emojis, memes, and hashtags are being used creatively and sometimes effectively against authoritarianism is Joan Donovan. Joan is the founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute in Boston University, assistant professor of journalism and emerging media studies. Welcome back to the Curiosity Desk, Joan.
Wicked happy to be back.
So, you have the distinguished privilege of working in a field where you get to do serious analysis of something called cute
cat theory. So, what is cute cat theory, and how does it relate to overthrowing a dictator?
Yeah, so this is something that a colleague over at UMass now, Ethan Zuckerman, had started to think about years ago when people started using social media for political organizing. And the idea is basically that if you're a dissident, it's best to use large-scale social media platforms if you're going to be organizing, because you can blend in among the masses. And so platforms in which people feel comfortable sharing everyday information, cute cats with their friends and family, that helps dissidents sometimes be able to organize in plain sight and recruit in even more people to their movement. And so these aren't clandestine movements. These are movements sometimes that have to stay publicly visible in order to recruit people and get their message across, but also have to do it in a way that makes the censors or the watchers or the regime
those who are watching, Big Brother, not be able to detect them or really even understand what they're doing. So the example of the milk tea alliance is great because boba tea, milk tea is such it's innocuous, right?
Yeah, exactly. But when you pair it together with this notion of the alliance, it's about Chinese dissidents and Hong Kong dissidents being able to communicate with each other across different social media platforms.
Can you tell us a little bit about what, for those who don't know, what is the Milk Tea Alliance?
It's basically a set of hashtags and memes and, images and things that people are sharing. But what it does is it signals not just that you're, a fan of milk tea, which a lot of people are, but also that the alliance part is important here because that's what distinguishes the hashtag from a consumer product. And it's what unites these groups of people that are looking for the liberation of Hong Kong together. And so even Chinese citizens who are hoping for the liberation or the freedom of Hong Kong are able to participate in this and even get the message out wider, because once the Milk Tea Alliance breaks out beyond just these groups of people, then it becomes more about the international diaspora. But what was interesting about that is once the hashtag was being used, and it was being used in a bunch of different languages as it became bigger and bigger. And in those different languages, at least on Twitter and a few other platforms, decided to make a little boba tea emoji that they would attach to those anything that said Milk Tea Alliance, and that was another way in which people could quickly identify each other, even if they didn't speak the same language.
How did milk tea become this milk tea specifically? How did this become the symbol?
I'm not too sure about why, other than it's one of these things that's just broadly popular amongst young people. If you think about even why the V for Vendetta mask became synonymous with anonymous, it's because the mask itself was just ubiquitously available at Halloween stores. But with milk tea, it's something that broadly is something we associate with the Asian diaspora.
Right.
It's something that everybody knows what it is. But it lends this really covert way of messaging, because if you're part of the Milk Tea Alliance, you know that underneath it all, it's not about being a fan of milk tea. It's about regime change.
Yeah. So what is it about? Is there something in particular about memes and emojis that make them such effective messaging tools? Is there something unique to them?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So in my book, Meme Wars, where I track, where me and my co-authors track the way in which the online far right comes online, we look at how the online far right utilized memes and hashtags from essentially the Occupy movement in 2011 all the way up through the day of the insurrection. And what we find is that not just in the right wing or not just in the Asian diaspora, but also in many other places, the memes and hashtags are a way for people to get united. Most prominent research on this has to do with more of the American pro-civil rights movements, Black Lives Matter, Me Too movements. We haven't had one of those big moments in a long time. Probably the last time was Tesla takeover.
It's been a few years.
Yeah, it's been a little while since we've had like a broad movement spring up around a hashtag or a set of memes. But on the right wing, I would say they've been able to mobilize a around a series of memes that are particularly grotesque and outrageous. So, like the claims that Haitian migrants were eating the pets.
Right.
If you had gone on Twitter in September of 2024 in the lead up to the election and looked at the memes around this, there was a whole meme set around The Simpsons because this had happened in Ohio and in Springfield, Ohio. And then, there's a famous cat on The Simpsons, Snowball. So there was a lot of R.I.P. Snowball memes. Musk got involved. And so memes that tend to be anonymous, they tend to float much more if they're not branded in some way. If they bring together a small in-group and they differentiate between an out-group, those are all things that people really gravitate towards in memes. But I'd say the most important part is that you can remix them and you can be part of it. You can make your own meme.
Yeah.
You can make up your own slogan. And that's where people really dive in. And that's where it's different from, say, a political slogan of the past, like, I don't know, I like Ike or
Sure.
Obama. I would say maybe Obama's hope poster is the first memification of a large political figure, besides maybe Ron Paul earlier than Obama, which is kind of ironic, I guess.
Yeah. You're listening to The Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with Joan Donovan, founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute in Boston University, professor about the use of memes, emojis, and hashtags. I mean, you bring up the right and their effective use of it here in the United States. Of course, we're also talking about it being used to push back against authoritarian regimes in other places in the world. Nevertheless, it's sort of depending on how you look at it, for good or for evil, they can be. It's like every tool is a weapon, right?
Yeah.
And what is it that what is it that makes certain ones work so well? I see this term around that they have to be sticky. They have a sticky quality.
Yeah,
so
well,
what is it that makes something sticky?
Well, think about the theme, what a meme is think about it as a DNA strand. It's the transmission of culture.
Yeah.
Whether it's between generations or between other cultural groups or other subcultures. And so memes are about propagation. They're about amplification. And so what makes them sticky, and this is pretty much what the entire field of advertising sloganeering is based on, is that you want to make something that rhymes, you want to make something that stays with you, literally sticks. So I'm loving it, right?
Yeah.
We know where that comes from. Sure. Just do it, have it your way. And a lot of these memes have just 3 words as well when they're slogans. So jobs, not mobs, build the wall. These things became very popular in 2016 when Trump adopted a memetic campaign strategy. But I think what's an interesting one about this from the Human Rights Forum report is when Winnie the Pooh is used, right?
Yeah, let's talk about Winnie the Pooh.
Winnie the Pooh is banned in China.
And there's, with an understandable reason, if you're thinking about why authorities would have banned him. Explain.
Yeah, so Winnie the Pooh, people started using it as a way to reference Xi Jinping. And the CCP did not like that. And they would suggest that Xi Jinping kind of has this family resemblance to Winnie the Pooh. And so there was a lot of before and after pictures. There's a lot of memes replacing Xi Jinping with Winnie the Pooh. And as a result, it just became really, it just literally lit up like a digital wildfire.
Yeah.
And so all kinds of
sticky quality.
It had the sticky quality. And people knew that it kind of scratched a little bit at the facade of the way in which China has tried to control speech. And what was interesting, too, is it had an international audience. And then when you start messing with Winnie the Pooh, right, if you're thinking about it, in terms of censorship, as the state looks outrageous, banning Christopher Robin's, from public consumption.
And is that to some extent the strategy here?
Yeah, it's to unveil, to unmask, to show that they're not as strong as they think they are. If they can't even control their own impulses around something as silly as being compared to a meme.
I wonder about, you mentioned the fact that to a certain extent these memes work on a number of levels. One, there's often irony, or it's taking something that's broadly out there and using it in a way that is either ironic or is saying we are an in-group of people who understand what this is, wink, wink, but anybody else isn't going to understand what this is. Does that therefore then somehow inherently limit its effectiveness because it is speaking to an in-group? So presumably, if you're trying to build a social movement of any kind, the idea is to grow it. And if what you're doing is communicating with a certain in-group who has to know what they're looking at to see it, does that limit how effective this strategy could be?
Somewhat, because one of the things that becomes alluring to these things, to people over time, is once they discover they're in a rabbit hole, or that there is a double meaning here, and so people will warm up to it. Other times, people will just explain what's going on in the replies. But it does take a while for the public to catch on. You can think about something as simple as the watermelon emoji, right? That became synonymous with support for Palestinians. It's not like people put any kind of support out there in the world and said, use this meme.
Right.
It started to develop organically. And then people started putting it in their avatars and their names online, right? And so these things develop in a very strange and non-linear way.
It's in some ways, it's the marketplace deciding what's effective, right? Because there is nobody on top saying this is what we will use. It's just the thing emerges.
Yeah, and if you can imagine like the symbol of the whistle recently, where, thousands of people have been 3D printing whistles. So, I know a lot of people got 3D printers for Christmas and stuff, my nephew included. And people went out and then started to think, well, how can we turn the 3D printer into a political tool, right? And that's one of the major things about all of these technologies is they can be turned into political tools, whether it's a 3D printer or a mobile phone.
I think a lot about the fact that despite the fact that the numbers are out there for a long time that suggest this, and it has been this way for a while, I think about the dominance, the economic dominance of something like video games. And yet I still don't, I feel like I don't hear enough about video games being talked about in the same breath as, say, TV and movies when it comes to cultural impact or, what people are spending their money on, right?
Yeah. Get younger professors.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that research is being done part of the Association of Internet Researchers, AOIR, which I'm a member of. But yeah, it is a kind of marginal field, and it's propagated mainly by very young scholars who, unfortunately haven't had the time for the come up. But I do think that technological shifts around video games are incredible, and as well the cultural shifts. I mean, even with video games, NVIDIA wouldn't be driving all of this innovation in AI if they hadn't developed these chips for video games. Faster graphics cards.
Totally.
So a lot of these things are integrated in these different ways, but it's really about, if you're going to study it, expanding your purview and trying to look at other places where you can see technology.
So in that same vein, are we right now currently underestimating the cultural importance and significance of things like memes and online jokes and use of emojis? Yes.
Yeah. And this has been sort of the last decade of my career is pointing out consistently that we underestimate a lot of these early forms of joking and pranking online because they eventually, at least in the last decade, have become part of the toolkit and communication strategy of all major politicians. You look at Gavin Newsom now is adapting a meme strategy and a different way of doing the internet. Like you can imagine if you were just, dropped into this world and had to read Gavin Newsom's posts online, you wouldn't think he's a progressive from California. No. But he's trolling. He's in the game. And that's a double-edged sword for politicians. You definitely, the more you roll in the mud, the dirtier you get.
As they say, adapt or die. That's Joan Donovan, founder of the Critical Internet Studies Institute and Boston University Assistant Professor of Journalism and Emerging Media Studies. As always, thank you for being with us here on the Curiosity Desk. Just ahead, Ramadan is nearly over. Lent is heading into its final stretch. One thing they both have in common, fasting. We explore why next on the Curiosity Desk. Stay with us.
I'm Jared Bowen. Tune into The Culture Show for daily discourse on the arts and culture scene, and join us for what is a continuous conversation about the state of the arts with the most interesting thinkers, innovators, and creators in the region and beyond. From the poets to the painters to the power brokers who hold the purse strings. It's all here on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Riverstone International US LLC, located in Beverly, Massachusetts. A Riverstone International company acquiring legacy insurance globally since 2010. Learn more at rsml.co.uk. And The Cambridge Homes, a nonprofit independent and assisted living community in Cambridge, offering residents supportive services as well as cultural, educational, and social programs. thecambridgehomes.org/tradition.
You're listening to The Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. The Muslim holy month of Ramadan ends this week, and Easter is just under 3 weeks away, ending 40 days of Lent for Christians. 2 holy seasons that rely on different calendars but have at least one shared practice, and that is fasting. What does it mean to give up something as part of a spiritual practice? And why is fasting something that seems to be a part of most religions? We're joined in studio by 2 people who can help us answer those questions. Reverend Dr. Jessica Chika, University Chaplain for the International Students at Boston University, and Sister Naureen Mallick, Associate Muslim Chaplain at Boston University. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Naureen, I want to start with you. Ramadan ends this Friday, I think.
Yes.
Can you talk us through what the past month has been like for you? Does the fasting get harder or easier as you get through the month?
So I think to begin with is harder because, like, for example, my friend is a coffee person, and our fast begins with a meal which is pre-dawn, and then it ends at sunset with another meal. The pre-dawn meal is called suhoor. The evening meal is called iftar. And you are not allowed to eat or drink anything during that time period. So a person like my friend whose morning begins with a cup of coffee is absolutely suffering the first 3 days. Her head is spinning, and she's in customer service. She's meeting clients. She's feeling nasty. She can't lose her temper. Otherwise, she'll lose her job. And then also it is a spiritual experience as well. So physically, you are... if your mouth runs dry, you can't have a sip of water or anything. That's one thing. But also, we are also trying to embody our best moral self as well. Yeah. So you're trying your best not to lose your temper, not to yell, not to be mean.
While putting yourself in position to want to lose your temper, to want to yell, because you're thirsty and hungry.
Exactly. And that happens, that's real. Because you're hungry, you are... annoyed, you are irritated, you want to yell at somebody, but you can't. So that is the physical aspect of it. And we also believe, the question that you asked about spirituality, we do believe that it is a spiritual month in the sense that Muslims believe that every good deed is multiplied like 700 times. So a little something that you do in normal days will get you like 10 brownie points. In Ramadan, it will give you 700 brownie points.
So you're in the bonus stage.
Yes. And since we are so tied to whatever you do in this world, you will be rewarded for in the hereafter. So the heavier scales of good deeds are, the better place you will be in the hereafter. So it is an active struggle to do good deeds in this world so that you're in a better place in the hereafter.
Draw the connection for me, if you can, to the religious practice. So why is fasting such a part of the Islamic faith, and during Ramadan in particular?
So every Muslim that you speak to will talk about the 5 pillars of Islam. The 5 pillars is what is... what defines Islam, that when you're a Muslim, you have to do these 5 things. The first is the Shahada, which is just the verbal statement of there's no God but God, and Muhammad is his prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The second is prayer. The third is fasting. The fourth is charity. The fifth is pilgrimage. And those are all actions that you absolutely have to do. They're called pillars because they're obligatory acts. Fundamental. You cannot not do it. So we have to pray 5 times. There's no choice about it. And we also have voluntary fasts, which can be observed throughout the year. But then this is the 9th month of the lunar calendar, which is called Ramadan. And it starts with the sighting of the moon. It ends with the sighting of the moon. So it can be 29 days. It can be 30 days. But all of those 29 out of 29 or 30 out of 30 days, you have to fast from pre-dawn to sunset.
You are listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with Boston University Sister Naureen Mallick and Reverend Jessica Chika about religious fasting. Jessica, I want to turn to you as you hear Naureen describing religious reasons for fasting in her faith. How do you connect with that as a Christian?
Yeah, so I come from a Protestant tradition. I'm a Lutheran. In our tradition, we don't have compulsory
fasting. I come from a Catholic tradition, so there's a little bit more compulsory fasting in the Catholic tradition.
Yeah, Lutherans are a little bit Catholic light, right? So nothing even having to do good works in order to gain favor with God. We believe God's grace comes to everybody. We see it as a spiritual practice, right? So it's a way that it helps us better connect with the divine. So in Lent, the 3 actions that you're supposed to undertake in Lent are fasting, almsgiving, and prayer. And Lent is meant to be a time of spiritual renewal. So it's kind of like a reset button for the year where you try to remove the obstacles between you and God, which is where the fasting comes in. So, you didn't have a lot of things to get between you and God when, back in the Middle Ages. So food was a big thing,
there
right?
There was no TV, there was no video games, there was no phones.
But today, in the modern context, some people will still give up certain foods. We don't do... most people don't do, complete fasts like Muslims do, but they might give up meat on a certain day of the week, or they might go vegan for that time period, or give up caffeine, which I tried once and
didn't go so well.
I mean, I made it, but
never again.
So in the modern context, you see more people who are giving up things like social media or trying to stop consuming so many things, or doing something called a plastic-free Lent. So instead of using single-use plastics for things, being more mindful about bringing reusable containers. And that connects us with not just the divine, but then like everyone around us as well, right? So we're thinking in terms of like love and justice issues, where if we are not using plastics, then every time we go to refill our, refillable mug, it reminds us, oh, yeah, I could have used a paper cup, or I could have used a plastic, whatever. But now I'm being very mindful of the fact that, like, every time I go to fill this is how many cups I would have used, right? So trying to develop relationship with other people and develop relationship with God.
As you say, Jessica, it's sort of like the fasting when it comes to food is sort of less a compulsory part of your Christian faith. I've sort of mentioned the fact that in Catholicism, I think there's a little bit more of that compulsory fasting, specifically when it comes to food, as it is in your case, Naureen. So I am fascinated with this idea of food as a part of it, because food is like the essence of life. It is the thing that brings us life. And yet, in both of these faith traditions, we see it also in Judaism. There's fasting as part of Judaism, and in other faiths as well. I mean, fasting is kind of a piece of almost every religion you can think of. How is that related to the spiritual in so much as, in my experience, I've sort of always felt like they say, well, it brings you closer to God. And I think when I'm hungry, I feel like I'm further away from God. I'm more distracted.
Yeah.
But just draw that line for me.
I think one of the ways that I've learned about, the hunger aspect of it, right? When you feel hungry, that is supposed to be a moment of intentionality. It's supposed to, instead of being, oh, I'm so upset about the fact that I have nothing, I can't eat something right now. Or if it's a specific thing, oh, I really want a cup of coffee, but I can't have it right now. That is a time where you should be turning towards prayer, right?
Yeah.
Like you should be being mindful of the fact that, oh, I have the ability to make the choice to not do this, where there are some people who don't have the ability to make that choice because they don't have food to eat. And so it's to make you more aware of your placement in the world. I think it's very similar.
Yeah, Sister Naureen, go ahead.
So as she's speaking, she's quoting my scripture as well, because in my scripture where the command for fasting is given, the two purpose of fasting is supposed to be لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, which means you may become more God conscious, and لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ, so that you may become grateful. It is only when you are hungry yourself, when you are experiencing that pang, can you empathize with somebody who doesn't have food on their plate. And that makes you grateful because of all the good things that you have. And when you do a mindful gratitude towards your creator, that obviously brings you closer to God. So that's how it connects to being a spiritual person. And also as a mom, my morning starts with, what am I going to pack for lunch for my kids? What's going to be for dinner? What's going to be for lunch? So when I'm not thinking of all of those things, I have all of this extra time actually to focus on. So I'm doing more of recitation from my book. I'm devoting more time to prayer, and I'm sort of freed up to reconnect more with God. So for us, we call it a whole body experience. So if you have heard of intermittent fasting, it helps with the physical detox.
Yeah.
We also think of Ramadan as a spiritual detox. So we are more focused inside with our connection with God. And because we also in Ramadan, if you come over to any of our community centers, right now in every city and every community center, people come together to break their fast in the evening. So like in my city of Worcester, they're serving like 300 to 400 people every single evening. So it's a sense of community. They come together, and then right after you eat, we have this long set of prayers, which extends for over an hour. So that's,
you got the energy from the food. Now you can pray for a whole hour.
Yeah. So that's because when else do you do that together?
Yeah.
So then as a community, when you pray together, that all, of course, brings that element of spirituality.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with Boston University's Sister Naureen Mallick and Reverend Jessica Chika about religious fasting. You both do work on college campuses. So, it's interesting. We hear a lot about young people and young people I don't necessarily want to say turning away from faith, but that faith, at least in America here, is maybe eroding a little bit in terms of organized religion and how young people are connecting to it. I think a lot of people think of college as a time where people kind of stop doing things that they were made to do, which could include going to services, whatever their discipline is. What's been your experience? What are you experiencing with young people in 2026 on college campuses when it comes to religion and faith?
Do you want me to talk about the iftar program?
Sounds like another segment for another time. Give me a brief answer.
We'd be happy to talk more about it.
Yeah, but at BU, we host that iftar every single evening, and there are more than 150 students who show up. So what we are experiencing is that away from home, these students are actually trying to be more mindful of those practices rather than go away from there. And because they're finding that sense of community as well, they are encouraged to do it together. It's very difficult to say, to communicate this, but for us, if you're unable to fast, you feel heartbroken. So these students are not actually giving up fasting. They are actually coming to us for religious accommodation so they can practice all of this. And so we have a very robust program, should I say, that we have a whole setup for the students to come and pray. We have separate prayer rooms set up specifically for this month. So, I mean, as far as our community is concerned, supported by Religious Life, we are not... far as Ramadan is concerned, I think that students are excited to do this rather than turning away from it.
Jessica?
Yeah?
This Lent, how's it been?
I mean, it's been, pretty standard. It is, I think Protestant Christianity, mainline Christianity is not in its highest peak right now. We have a lot of students who are spiritual but not religious, is how they would describe themselves. Yeah. But they do seek out practices, as long as it's not tied to what they deem to be religion. Yeah. They want to embody practices. They want to engage. Exactly. Yeah. And so, have I seen fasting as one of those things that they want to engage in? Not so much. But I think there is a want there, especially I've been in my position for 10 years now. So I've gone through COVID, and I think coming out of COVID, we've had so many students that are looking for community. And that's one of the things that faith and spirituality can offer to people, is a community of people that they can go talk to, that they can share interests with. And some of them just haven't had any exposure to religion. And so we try to create opportunities for students to learn. And the reason we're on this show is because we did a panel on fasting with our Jewish and Orthodox Christian and Catholic colleagues to talk about, what we all share this in common. What does it look like in each of our traditions? What do we share in common? And so, the room was full. We had a really great turnout for it. So there's an interest there in learning more about these things. I think there's just a fear of, this is what I know about these traditions, and I don't know if I want to get myself involved in it. Yeah. But we do a lot of great programming with students. We have a lot of students who are engaged. We do have a very large campus, so percentage-wise, it may not be as much as some other things.
Well, as I feel like we're just scratching the surface. I wish we had more time, but we are out of time. We will definitely have you back to continue this conversation at a future date. Thank you both for being with us. That's Boston University's Sister Naureen Mallick and Reverend Jessica Chika. We were talking about religious fasting. Stay with us. Just ahead, coffee 3 ways, including one that includes cracking a raw egg in it. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Stay with us.
ICE made over 600 arrests last year at Massachusetts courthouses. I'm Arun Roth. Today on GBH's All Things Considered, Sarah Betancourt joins us to talk about the human impact on immigrant communities across the state. And on this week's Extra Point, Boston Legacy FC kicks off its first season, marking a big moment for a globally diverse squad. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Subaru of New England, the all-wheel drive 2026 Subaru Crosstrek Hybrid. Subaru retailer locations at SubaruofNewEngland.com. And Biogen. For nearly 50 years, Biogen has been committed to advancing biotechnology innovations to develop new medicines for people with hard-to-treat diseases. Biogen, making breakthroughs happen. Biogen.com.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. As we like to say, your curiosity and your questions are the lifeblood of the Curiosity Desk. And we recently got one question that caught our eye from Marla in Cambridge, who wrote, Did you know there are people who make their coffee by cracking a whole egg in the ground, shell and all, and this still happens supposedly in the Midwest USA, but came from Scandinavia originally? Why would they do this? Thank you for your prompt attention to this horrifying matter. Well, Marla, we hear you, and in just a few minutes, we'll welcome a James Beard award-winning chef, Karyn Tomlinson, on Zoom from St. Paul, Minnesota, who's not only going to attempt to show us that it is not horrifying, but also that it is delicious. But Marla's question also got us here at the Curiosity Desk, talking and wondering about other unique and creative spins on coffee from around the world. And since we all know more coffee is better coffee, we thought we'd explore. So with us in the studio is Pan Sapkasem from Phinista in Cambridge, who's got some Vietnamese coffee for us, and assistant beverage director at the Turkish bakery and cafe Sofra, Kristin Santangelo, who's going to talk about Turkish coffee. Welcome to you both. Thanks for being with us on the Curiosity Desk.
Thank you so much.
All right, Pan, we're going to start with you. Vietnamese coffee. I hear Vietnamese coffee. The first thing I think of is the condensed milk piece of that. Am I getting that generally right? Is that the thing that distinguishes it?
Yes, it is. But a lot of places use condensed milk. But Vietnamese coffee make it famous, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of how strong the bean is, how like bitterness the beans, the Robusta beans are. That's why it brings condensed milk come to like. They put condensed milk into coffee.
Because the coffee beans themselves were bitter, and so the sweet condensed milk like kind of gives it a little...
That's different from like the typical Arabica, where it can be more like fruitiness, but Robusta bean can be like heavily on the bitterness side.
Yeah.
So that's why they use a lot of like condensed milk, eggs, or even salt.
All right.
And they put in their coffee, yeah.
If you are hearing some crazy sounds, by the way, that is because there is coffee being made right now in the studio, including we're going to try to do that egg coffee. Our producer, Olivia Corsio's in studio, is going to be taking directions from our guest who's going to be joining us in a bit. But on the Vietnamese coffee, so your place, Phinista, do you have something? Did you have a special way of doing it there, or a special recipe?
Oh, everything is our trade secret, but we use like a big jumbo fin. Because the volume that we have in terms of like orders that coming in, so we had to use like a big jumbo fin so we can create like a big batch of coffee.
Yeah, so
and
you
then
do big batches at once.
Yeah, big batch, like the big mason jar.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's how we make coffee. Yeah.
Do you have some coffee with you?
Yeah, we do have. I
do?
One for each.
Oh, all right. We're all going to try some coffee. Thank you.
Go
So
around for
what
you.
do we got here? Folks who are watching on the YouTube stream, we got coffee galore happening here. You can see the coffee being made in the studio. And we got, so is this just your standard iced coffee, or what do we have?
This is ice Saigonese, where we use the
sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good though.
Where we use like Vietnamese coffee, which is black coffee with condensed milk, and then we top it with sea salt cold foam.
Sea salt cold foam.
Yeah, that's
this
right.
is pretty delicious. All right, we're talking with Pan Sapkasem, and now I'm going to turn to Kristin Santangelo from Sofra, and we're going to talk a little bit about Turkish. What makes Turkish coffee?
So Turkish coffee is very distinct. It is the oldest known method of brewing coffee in the world. So traditionally, it's made in this little copper cup that's called a jezve. You've got sand and you've got embers underneath that. So one of the other more characteristics part of it is that the grounds of the beans, they're super, super fine. They're like fine, like powdered sugar. So you put the grounds in the cup, you put your water in the cup, you bring it to this really frothy boil 3 different times, take it off real fast. You serve it in the cup, and the grounds are served in with the coffee liquid.
Oh, so they're
as
not
you're
removed.
drinking, yeah, exactly. So they're kind of settling at the bottom of the cup, but as you're drinking, you're sort of getting this more textured experience with your coffee.
Okay. Or is the idea you will get some of the grounds in your mouth and then you swallow or chew them, or do you just live with it?
Bit.
Or what do you do?
Yeah. So most of the grounds are going to settle to the bottom of the cup. But yes, you will get a little bit of that texture as you're going, but you're not supposed to necessarily get a whole mouthful of grounds as you're drinking it.
That's cool. And you say this is the oldest method for brewing coffee. I mean, how old are we talking about here? And what do we know about how that was developed?
Yeah, so we're talking 16th century Ottoman Empire. The very first coffee shop to ever exist was in Istanbul. Wow. So really, coffee culture as we know it today comes from the Turkish people and developing it and making it just a huge part of bringing people together.
Oh, amazing stuff. So you are making some coffee for us right now. Is that what's happening?
Yep. Yep.
Is that ready to go?
This is ready to go.
All right, we're going to try some. So let's try some here. And there we go. We're going to try a little coffee
hot,
here.
so just be careful.
All right, so I'm going to watch myself. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can watch me drinking coffee. I don't know how exciting that is really for people, but all right, cheers.
Cheers.
I'm going to try a little here. Oh, that's really good too.
Yeah.
That is some delicious stuff. Oh, I really like that. All right, we've been talking with Pun Sapkasem, Pun, and Kristin Santangelo, and now we're gonna bring a third person into the conversation. Joining us via Zoom from St. Paul, Minnesota, is Karyn Tomlinson. She's a James Beard award-winning chef. Welcome, Karyn.
Karyn, actually. Hi.
Oh, Karyn. My apologies, Karyn.
All right.
Welcome to the Curiosity Desk. Apologies for getting that wrong. Okay, this is this. We got a question from a listener. We've got us started on this about this Scandinavian coffee where an egg goes in. You are an expert on this. Tell us about what this is and where this tradition comes from.
Yeah, so I grew up having coffee like this. My family were Swedish immigrant farmers, and this tradition, I think, really started with it's an immigrant tradition. If you went to Sweden, you wouldn't find people making coffee this way. But basically, what happens is you have a pot like this.
Yeah.
That you heat up, bring to boil on the stove with water, and then you beat an egg. I actually don't use the shell because some eggshells are kind of gross. You know where they've been.
Yeah, but sometimes the shell is used. Is that true? Is that accurate?
Some people do.
Wow.
Some people do. But I serve this in my restaurant, and I don't want any question about what might or may
Yep, fair enough. Fair enough, Karyn.
So you have a bowl of coffee grounds, and you beat an egg, and you put as much egg in there as necessary to get it kind of damp, like potting soil. And then you dump those grounds, egg and all, into the boiling water and let it just simmer for a minute. So the grounds kind of form a raft. It's almost like you're making coffee consommé. That's really what this whole concept is about. And after it sits for a minute or two, just simmering like that, then you shock it with cold water. So you just drizzle some cold water over the top, and that keeps it from cooking any longer. And then you pour it out. You pour it through a strainer, or if you're really brave and you don't mind some chunks of coffee, then you can just go for it. But the thing that's really cool about this is the egg sort of purifies or clarifies coffee. So I think that this was a tradition that people started in order to make coffee taste better. It removes some of the bitterness from coffee, and it enables you to use coffee that is maybe not top quality. It's maybe cheaper. It's been sitting in your cupboard. Think about people in, farm country. It probably took them a long time to get coffee from anywhere. And so it was just sitting around, not your ideal brew. So they were using these eggs to kind of clarify their coffee, and it just makes for a really clean, smooth cup.
That's Karyn Tomlinson via Zoom from St. Paul, Minnesota. She's James Beard award-winning chef at Myreal. So you said this you serve this coffee at your restaurant. Is that common, or is it even where you are in the Midwest? Is it still quite unique to be doing the coffee this way?
Yes, it is quite unique. I haven't bumped into this type of coffee in another restaurant. Our state fair, which is a pretty big deal here in Minnesota, does have a place. I think there's some Lutheran church booth where you can get egg coffee like this. It's also known as church basement coffee because a lot of people in small towns and churches would make coffee this way. But
I love that. Church basement coffee. Church basement coffee is great. Okay, so Karyn, our producer Olivia Corcio, who you've spoken with and you tried to impart with some wisdom about how to make this, has been trying to make one of these as best as she can in our studio under somewhat trying conditions, I would say. But it looks I mean, we're in a radio studio, not a restaurant, so I think that's just part of what's made it difficult. So, Olivia, can you tell me what's going on here? How have you done here?
Yeah, I think I did okay. I would have to say I think you can probably get a better cup of Myreal. But I did the coffee, I did the egg, we boiled it. I tried to follow your recipe, and I think I'll let Edgar give it a go. But all
right, so Karyn, I'm going to give this a try. So this has gone through the steps as you have prescribed, and I will offer this to my other guests if they want to try it as well. I'm going to take a sip here. It tastes like coffee. You know what I mean? It tastes like coffee. Like that tastes to me like I was expecting that I was expecting I was going to be like that tastes like an egg in my mouth, but it doesn't.
No.
Wow. All right, so I'm going to pass this around, see if anybody else wants to try it. Do you find when people come to the restaurant, Karyn, are they at all skeptical of this when they're like, I'm just going to have a meal and they're like, I'm going to grab a coffee, and then this whole thing comes at them? It is not the coffee that they are expecting. Is there some skepticism, or do people just kind of go with it?
We definitely have had some egg coffee skeptics walk through our doors, but I'd venture to say that almost all of them have been converted by the time they actually give it a try. But it's kind of cool. Some of them remember their grandparents making coffee this way, or they've heard of it and kind of funny corners of Minnesota. So it's kind of a fun tradition to keep alive here.
And do you think, is this something you think if people are interested, they could just try it home, ought to try it home? Is it worth it?
Absolutely. I think give it a go.
All right, let's just do a quick round robin. Karyn, make the case for my next cup of coffee to be done this way. Why should I try it?
You should try it this way because you can make a large batch. You can keep drinking from the same pot all day long, which I love.
Ooh.
And this is the best way to use mediocre coffee and make it taste delicious.
That's a pretty good sell right there. I like that one. I'll buy that. Okay, Kristin Santangelo, make your case for why my next cup of coffee ought to be some Turkish coffee.
I would say because of the historical significance with it, you're really drinking the oldest coffee out there that you can. And also, if you happen to be with someone who knows about Turkish coffee fortune telling, there's a whole fortune telling component with Turkish coffee.
Let me just pause you right there for a second there. Can you explain that a little bit more, please? Fortune telling?
Yes. So the fortune telling aspect actually developed with the whole coffee culture in Turkey. Because you have those grounds at the bottom of your cup, there's this whole method that came about where you flip your cup over and the grounds are going to create certain symbols or shapes. And then based off of those, what you see in the cup, you can start, predicting people's futures.
Okay. Well, I'm almost done my cup of coffee. Maybe we will have time to get to that real quick. Pun, can your coffee tell fortunes?
Nope.
Okay.
It only give you energy.
But it will give you energy.
Yeah,
Make your case for why my next coffee ought to be a delicious Vietnamese coffee.
So I think if you want only a cup of coffee that will give you energy throughout the day,
yep,
that's the answer.
So if you just have one.
Just one is enough.
Yeah.
For the day. And also the taste of dessert coffee make you can enjoy throughout your conversation with friends.
Okay.
Or work. That gotta be Vietnamese coffee.
Okay. All right. I feel like you've all made a good case, but I am now just finished. Can we read my fortune before we go?
You have your saucer over there, right? So you're just gonna flip your cup over your saucer. Yep.
Okay.
Hand it to me.
Oh, okay. If folks are watching on the YouTube stream, hopefully you can catch this. We're going to read a fortune here.
All right, so now
our first fortune on the Curiosity
You're going to say,
desk.
may my fortune read my state.
May my fortune read my state.
Okay, perfect. Here we go. All right. Oh, okay. This is great. Okay. So it's the sides of the cup that I'm getting this from. And what I'm seeing at the side of the cup here is a mountain.
Okay.
And we have a lot
on the side?
Along the side, we have the mountain here.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of density at the bottom. So this might mean that you've had something going on in your life that might be a little heavier, maybe something you've been working on, maybe a
new show, for example. A new radio show.
Exactly. A new radio show that, you're putting a lot of effort and work into. And because the mountain and the peak of it is so close to the rim of the cup in your very near future, you're going to reach the top of this mountain. Things are going to really start smoothing out. This is going to flow. You're going to feel the wind and the breeze on the top of that mountain.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it there because that's a high note, at least for me. Hopefully you all feel great as well. We have been speaking with Pan Sapkasem, Kristin Santangelo, and Karyn Tomlinson about unique ways to enjoy coffee. Thank you all for being with us on the Curiosity Desk.
Thank you.
Thank you. And right now we're going to turn our attention to Jared Bowen, who's at the Boston Public Library ahead of the Culture Show, which is coming at you in just a few short minutes. Jared, it's one of my favorite kinds of Wednesdays. It's a Watch Party Wednesday.
It is, and this time we're going back 50 years to Taxi Driver, which a lot of us, I think we all just watched it recently, Callie, Mark, Anastasio from the Coolidge Corner Theatre and I, and it's a sobering reality to watch it in this moment, in this time, and then to think what was being considered 50 years ago. So, of course, we'll be talking about that, and people can call in at 617-300-3838. If you have views on Taxi Driver and want to join our conversation, we very much welcome it.
I just love the fact that you got Callie to watch Taxi Driver, which is, I feel like that's a feat in and of itself.
You just threw gasoline on the fire, Edgar. We'll get to that in just a moment.
Okay, the Curiosity Desk is produced by Aidan Connolly, Rachel Armani, Olivia Corcio, Hannah Loss, and Nicole Garcia. Patty Daniels is the egg in our coffee. Our live stream director is Colin Cockrell. Our engineer is John LaClaw Parker. Special thanks today to David Goodman and Andrew Massawa. We will be right back here in 23 short hours on GBH 89.7 and streaming on YouTube. Until then, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Cambridge School of Culinary Arts in Porter Square, offering teen and adult recreational cooking and baking workshops, series, and cooking couples classes for culinary enthusiasts. CambridgeCulinary.com.
They solve murders with blood, sweat, and tears. Literally, if you're looking to see the team of London-based forensic scientists do what they do best. And Silent Witness, tonight at 9 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Culture Show news desk, I'm Craig Lamolt. As you may have seen, actor Sean Penn was a no-show at the Oscars Sunday when he won Best Supporting Actor for his performance in One Battle After Another, as announced by Kieran Culkin.
Sean Penn couldn't be here this evening, or didn't want to, so I'll be accepting the award on his behalf.
And now we know why. He was meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who posted a photo of them together, along with a note saying the actor has stood with Ukraine since the war with Russia began. Last night's World Baseball Classic was a mixed bag for those watching the Boston Red Sox players representing Team USA and Team Venezuela. Sox outfielder Wilyer Abreu knocked one out of the park for the Venezuelans in the fifth inning.
Otro Boston Red Sox.
In the end, though, it was Red Sox pitcher Garrett Whitlock on the mound for Team USA who allowed the winning run in the top of the ninth, and outfielder Roman Anthony, who struck out to end the tournament. They'll all be playing the same team again for opening day a week from tomorrow, and the home opener at Fenway is on April 3rd. The Boston Marathon will look a little bit different for runners this year. The BAA announced this week that it will start runners in 6 different waves rather than the 4 waves used in recent years. The BAA said in a statement the waves are geared towards creating a continuous flow of runners along the course route. And here's a recommendation. Our colleagues over at CRB have posted the entire audio from this past weekend's tribute to Brian O'Donovan, the beloved GBH host and ambassador for Irish music and culture who passed away in 2023. The concert at Symphony Hall featured Irish musicians, the Boston Pops, and musical members of O'Donovan's own family, including his Grammy-winning daughter, Aoife O'Donovan. That's it for this edition of the GBH News Culturecast. I'm Craig Lamolt. Coming up next, it's The Culture Show.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. I'm joined by co-host Callie Crossley and Mark Anastasio, Artistic Director at the Coolidge Corner Theatre. Mark, thank you so much for joining us at the table here. We have a real movie guy through and through joining us here. This will be fun for our Wednesday watch party today. We are kicking off another Culture Show Wednesday watch party, our monthly movie club. And today we're getting into The Yellow Checker Cab by way of one of the most enduring and disturbing American films of the 1970s. Martin Scorsese's 1976 classic Taxi Driver. It's a portrait of urban isolation, psychic dislocation, and post-Vietnam America, all seen through the windshield of Travis Bickle, a man drifting through New York City and weaving in and out of his own fits of violent fantasy and paranoia.
The taxi driver is looking for a target. Getting ready. Getting organized. Preparing himself for the only moment in his life that will ever mean anything.
You talking to me? Then who the hell else are you talking? Talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here.
You will never see a more chilling performance than this. Robert De Niro in Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver.
50 years later, Taxi Driver still looms large in American film culture. It gave us one of Robert De Niro's most lasting performances, one of Bernard Herrmann's most haunting scores, and one of the most unsettling anti-heroes in movie history. But in 2026, how does it play? Is it a character study, a political fever dream, a warning? Do you see today's America in the one Scorsese captured in 1976? We're opening up the lines and asking, does Taxi Driver still hold up? Call or text us at 617-300-3838. Again, our number is 617-300-3838. Or if you're here at the Boston Public Library in our studio, feel free to step up to our crowd mic right here to weigh in on the conversation. Well, I think the way we might start with this is talking about the difficulty of this film, which I think in our morning meeting we all realized we all experienced because all of us went back to watch it. I had watched it for the first and only time, I think, when I was an early teen, well before I could understand anything about what this movie meant or represented. I watched it again last night and was profoundly disturbed and found it an immensely difficult experience. But for reasons we'll talk about in this throughout the next hour, I understood this movie on a much deeper level and very much appreciated what the filmmakers were giving us here.
I hated it with every fiber of my being. I had never seen it before, so I watched this for this conversation. Of course, I'd heard about it, and what I'd heard about it most of the time was that it's a classic. It's in the canon, so I'm looking to see something. I knew it was going to be violent, and I don't like violent movies, as y'all know, but I was going to go through it because I'm going to see the classics. Well, it's a classic like Birth of a Nation. The entire time, the plot is just coming at me as a black person with all the slurs and all the messaging, and I hated it, I hated it, I hated it. Maybe it's about isolation, maybe it's about alienation. I really don't care. I resent the fact that I had to watch 2 hours of somebody dumping on me. That's where I am.
Mark, what did you think?
That's an understandable place to be, Callie. I think I think the film does play as a warning. I saw it as sort of even more important now in 2026 than perhaps when it was released. I think in '76, Scorsese was making a film about this disturbed individual, sort of as a way for making people aware that these people exist. And back then, there might have been one Travis in every few, or in every few thousand. And nowadays, it seems like there's a Travis Bickle. 1 out of 4 people is losing it. In this way.
That's just what I was thinking, that we often ask the question, does it hold up? In this case, I think it was very much telling the future. So I'm not making a joke here, but I wasn't around in 1976 to be able to watch this and to understand society. And of course, it was a reflection of its time. How else would this be written? But this is certainly so much the normalcy, sadly, of our time, because you have this figure who has, in Travis Bickle, played by Robert De Niro, who has these incredibly racist, homophobic, misogynist, I'm the hero, I'm the guy who can save everything thoughts. As a former Marine, if that's really the case, I think we can talk about that too. But these are thoughts that consume him, and we know that this is the root of so much of the violence that's happening today. People who see themselves as the individual and everything and everyone else is the other, especially as we find in this film in the height of a political season where there is campaigning and all of these issues are rising to the fore.
So I have to say that what is excellent about the film, so people are going to say, okay, she just said she hated it, and I do, are the production pieces of it. The score by Bernard Herrmann, it was the last one he did right before he died, is a character in the film. Sometimes scores are just underpinning, and that's it. But this one really comes alive in the storytelling, the messaging, and becomes a character in it, and it's really well done. It's a weird kind of score, but it fits the situation and the setting, so that's good. Oh my God, the cinematography is incredible. And in reading up for this conversation, discovered that they didn't have much budget. So Michael Chapman, who shot it, said had they had more money, he doesn't know if he would have ended up with the kind of look that it had, that it really played into that dark, gritty look that he mastered well. And I must talk about the editing. So we have 4 credits on the editing. 2 of them are women. One is Thelma Schoonmaker, who is, of course, Martin Scorsese's longtime collaborator, but she's uncredited in this film. And Mark, you know the reason why. And the other 3, and we don't know who did what, but the editing is really powerful, which drives this awful movie forward.
Yeah, it's really well put together, and Scorsese talked a lot about how this cinematography in this film is a little strange. They did just about everything that they could to keep viewers off kilter. There's shots that they're choosing and location placement for the camera that is outside the norm of what was being done at the time, and all of that was to destabilize audiences, to make them sort of feel as though they're inhabiting this unhinged space that Travis Bickle is existing in.
Well, that's one of the things I began noticing last night as I was watching it again, is the repeated shots of him in the rearview mirror. Of course, it makes sense as though we're a passenger in the taxi, but it also makes great sense in that we're just getting this fragmented view of who this man is and how he may see himself. Is he seeing himself sliced off from society the same way we're seeing him every time he looks in the rearview mirror, and you only get that little part of the crust of his nose and his eye, and it becomes more and more unsettling the more time we're spending with him.
Well, I think we should, this is early in the film where we get an insight into Travis Bickle's interior world and what he's thinking about as he drives his taxi through New York's nightlife.
Whores, skunk, buggers, queens, fairies, dopers, junkies, sick, venal. Someday a real rain will come and wash all this scum off the streets.
So it all comes together, what we just said, that powerful score. The visual is his looking in that rearview mirror, and the first shot was just his eyes. And then that editing, the cinematography is so dark. It's very powerful.
Yeah, it sounds like the lead into a Fox News segment.
Well, so exactly. We're talking about taxi driver. You can call in at 617-300-3838, 617-300-3838. And yes, of course, so much of this film is him looking at what he sees as, which is very interesting, he sees as this grime and filth around New York City. Interesting side note, apparently there was a sanitation strike when they were shooting, so that was actual garbage you were seeing on the city streets of New York. So to some degree it was mirroring reality. But here's a man who's looking around and thinks that everything needs to be cleaned up, or everyone needs to be cleaned up. But at the same time, when we're in his own apartment, it's filthy. There is trash everywhere. We're understanding how he is living himself and how he chooses to live for himself. And he is also, if you're thinking that he's talking about morality here, he's spending his nights in a porn palace and he's watching adult films. I'm not making my own judgment there, but if you're to follow through what he's thinking and about how he's seeing society, that doesn't necessarily track. So there's this hypocrisy in the way he wants New York City to theoretically be cleaned up when he's immersed himself in the very things he might be criticizing.
Yeah, he's choosing to keep himself, in this space that he loathes. He's working the night shift, working the areas of town where this sort of stuff is taking place. When he's hired as the cab driver in the film, he mentions that he'll go anywhere, he'll pick up anywhere, and he spends all his time in this. It must be the 42nd Street area where he's just constantly surrounded by the sort of prostitution that he hates. He's always driving by it. You'd think that he would take himself out of it if it were,
because he could go anywhere. He's in a taxi.
He can. He's in a car. He can remove himself, but he chooses not to. He stays immersed until it overwhelms him to the point where there's an explosion.
Well, then let's...
I just want to follow up on something you said, because I really didn't pay attention to this because I was so busy hating. The nastiness of his room contrasted with a little bit later in the early part of the film. He talks about all the scum and everything on the street, as we just heard, but he has to clean that cab every night. And so for him, I guess that's the beginning of from his viewpoint, I can clean this up. So he begins by cleaning up what he describes in very vulgar terms in the back of his cab. And that's going to contrast with what's in his house.
Well, this leads into exactly what I was about to introduce. And by the way, again, if you want to weigh in on the conversation, our number is 617-300-3838, talking about Taxi Driver and how it stands today. Well, speaking of cleaning up, he cleans himself up. Shaves, puts on a nice jacket, because he wants to pursue Sybil Shepherd's Betsy. She is a woman that he starts obsessing over by parking his car in front of campaign headquarters, where she is a campaign staffer, sees this beautiful blonde, and finally gets the gumption to go up and introduce himself by going into the campaign office, and then meets her. And here is a bit of that first conversation where she decides to, yes, I'll go out on this date with this taxi driver, because she had been aware that he'd been watching her outside the window. And in this scene, we find Travis Bickle and Betsy getting coffee as Travis passes judgments on her co-worker, Tom, played by Albert Brooks.
When I walked in and I saw you two sitting there, I could just tell by the way you were both relating that there was no connection whatsoever. And I felt when I walked in that there was something between us. There was an impulse that we were both following. So that gave me the right to come in and talk to you. Otherwise, I never would have felt that I had the right to talk to you or say anything to you. I never would have had the courage to talk to you. And with him, I felt there was nothing, and I could sense it. And when I walked in, I knew I was right. Did you feel that way?
I wouldn't be here if I didn't.
So this is early on in this encounter, when we're still finding our way into him, but already you get a sense there of the manipulation as he's trying to elevate himself out of whatever existence he's had and try to land himself this beautiful blonde in terms of a date, if not more.
What I was fascinated by, and for a moment I paused, because when he said, I saw you sitting there and there was no connection whatsoever, I said, somebody would have to be a little bit more intuitive than this guy to get that. But he exactly got that. So I was trying to figure out, what does that mean, coming from him in this moment? And she confirmed he was right.
Yeah, well, I think even, there's a whole history of charismatic psychopaths out there, right?
Good point,
so maybe
Mark.
they're, Ted Bundy was a good conversationalist. Like, I think that falls into that category.
As we think about how this was written, so here Paul Schrader is writing this, and interestingly, he's talked about in interviews that he consulted the works of Jean-Paul Sartre and Camus and tried to immerse himself in psychology of the underground man, that to some degree he was writing about his own self and his own insecurities and how he found himself moving about the world. And this is how this character came to be constructed. Again, somebody who was written more than 50 years ago, played out on the screen first 50 years ago, but something that people intimately knew. In another interview that I saw as I was reading up on this, he talked about somebody showed up on one of the studio lots at one point and said, "How did you know my story?" It was a young man. And he basically had to explain to this young man, well, there are many people like you, so this isn't your story. But this young man was so convinced that it was his, which gave us more insight into the creation of this character and, sadly, how universal he may be.
Well, Schrader also talked about he was at a bad time in his life. He had been kicked out of his professional union. He was going through a divorce. He was almost homeless. I guess he was living around and couch surfing. So he was ending up in the only place that was open all night, which was the Sex Theater in LA, which I guess stays open 24 hours. So came out of that months and months, I guess, of doing that and said, there's a lot of folks who are finding themselves in weird spaces trying to find a connection with anybody, and here's what I did. And so obviously some of that ended up in this script.
Yeah, we have Susan from Rhode Island who is texting that she has not seen Taxi Driver but lived in communist Poland and remembers the communist government showing Taxi Driver in theaters as propaganda, as a glimpse of what a life in America is actually like.
Wow.
Which is an extraordinary take.
That's pretty funny. I used the film sort of in that way once when I put together a program at the Coolidge that I had called New York City Psychos. And it was a program that I pieced together because I was upset with how many of my friends were leaving Boston and moving to New York. So I showed Taxi Driver and a film called Maniac and Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, as a way of saying maybe you should stay here.
Spoken like a true artistic director of a programmer of a movie house. I've mistaken. I thought Susan was texting. She's actually on the line, so let's hear from Susan. I'm sorry, Susan, to give your preamble away, but tell us more about how this was used in Poland, and I think significantly how it was received in Poland, if you know that.
Well, I was there as a student, and I had young friends, 20-something friends, and they were very interested in all things American, especially American film. But Poland was, under communism at the time, and they didn't really get new releases very often. And so usually the movies that you saw were kind of silly. But I noticed particularly that they got this one when it was fairly new. And, I think that the government was using this as a form of propaganda that, to tell people this is what life is like in the U.S. And, I had friends who saw it, but I didn't see it because I had an idea what it was like and I didn't want to see it. So I haven't seen it, so I can't really weigh in on that. I just know that it was used as a form of propaganda.
Well, Susan, thank you for the call. It's so fascinating. And we're going to continue this conversation talking about Taxi Driver, especially the political nature of it as we continue our conversation. Again, we're talking about Martin Scorsese's 1976 film Taxi Driver. I'm joined by Callie Crossley and Mark Anastasio, and we want to take your take on this American classic. Does it resonate today? Does Travis Bickle read differently now? Call or text us at 617-300-3838. Again, that number is 617-300-3838. The conversation continues on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
ICE made over 600 arrests last year at Massachusetts courthouses. I'm Arun Roth. Today on GBH's All Things Considered, Sarah Betancourt joins us to talk about the human impact on immigrant communities across the state. And on this week's Extra Point, Boston Legacy FC kicks off its first season, marking a big moment for a globally diverse squad. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Rockland Trust Bank, helping foster healthy relationships with money by providing education and resources to the community, one neighborhood at a time. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. And the Delaney at the Vale, a luxury senior living rental community for adults 62 plus, committed to providing residents a lifestyle shaped by choice and connection, allowing for a personalized retirement experience. DelaneyAtTheVale.com. And Biogen, making breakthroughs happen. Proud sponsor of A Nova Moment, Wednesday evenings at 5:18 on GBH's All Things Considered. More at biogen.com.
The Pulse of Boston, in your pocket. Get local news, stories, and live radio with the new GBH News app. Download it today on the App Store and Google Play.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. I'm joined by Culture Show co-host Callie Crossley and Mark Anastasio, Artistic Director at the Coolidge Corner Theatre. If you're just tuning in, welcome to our Wednesday watch party. Today we're revisiting Taxi Driver, the 1976 film that cemented Martin Scorsese as one of the defining directors of American film, and which gave Robert De Niro one of the most indelible roles ever written. It's a film about alienation, obsession, and the fantasy of cleansing a broken world through violence. But it's also about New York in collapse, about post-war disillusionment, and about the danger of a man who confuses his own unraveling with moral purpose. We want to hear from you. Does Taxi Driver still hold up? Does Travis Bickle feel like a relic of the 1970s or someone we recognize today? Call or text us at 617-3838 or step up to the crowd mic here at the library. Our number again is 617-300-3838. It's interesting to also talk about, does it hold up today? Because there were a lot of people who argued in 1976, 50 years ago, of course, that it didn't hold up even then. The reviews were kind of mixed. There were boos when this premiered at the Cannes Film Festival. People walked out at the Cannes Film Festival. It ended up winning top honors there. But of all people, this is really fascinating. Tennessee Williams was on the jury that year, and Tennessee Williams criticized it as being a Roman circus. He criticized it for its cruelty and for all of the spilled blood. And if we remember, Tennessee Williams is somebody who blew up the American family over and over again in his dramas, and he was very adventurous and forward and unapologetic in his depictions of characters. So for him to say that, I think it's fascinating to understand how divisive it was even then, and as we're getting from the tone today, still divisive.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. Something I noted while we were talking about his Travis looking for purity and cleanliness and all of that, Sybil Shepherd is wearing a white dress or white clothing through most of this. So
white and red, I noticed.
Yes, so that's true. So the red comes in later, but I guess for him that was symbolizing, the cleaned up person.
Well, he did say at the beginning, I saw, he writes, because all along, of course, he's writing a journal or
and narrating
think of a Ted Kaczynski-esque manifesto, and he writes, I saw an angel before me.
That is true. So I just wanted to point that out. I thought that was interesting. There is a point in the film, if I may, because the only parts I like were the cinematography and the editing, as I said, that both Scorsese and Michael Chapman, the filmmaker, and everybody apparently agree is a pivotal moment. And this is, he's gone, he's met Sybil, they've had the coffee, and then he messes up. He asks her out on a date and takes her to the porn house. And she's like, are you kidding me? Really? This is not what we're talking about. And so then he starts in a pursuit of trying to get her back and apologize or whatever. And he's somewhere in a hallway on a payphone trying to call her. So here's Travis paying another visit. No, that's right. This is that's not the one I want. It's the one where, yes, it is. He comes back to the Palatine campaign office where she is, And he's trying to talk to her about not calling him back. Now, I just want to say I'm going to play this, but that's not the pivotal part that the Scorsese and everybody likes. It comes after this scene where he's trying to call her after she kicks him out. And they show him at this payphone, and then they move the camera to the hallway, the empty hallway. And I remember I was looking at it like, okay, what are we doing here? And they said that was the ultimate symbolic move to show how hurt he was. And Scorsese said, I didn't want to show him on camera being hurt, which I thought was fascinating, and that it had more power not seeing him on camera to the end of that call where he walks out and she's blown him all off and he's begging her, I've sent you flowers, you won't talk to me, blah, 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 blah. So I just thought that all along, as Mark had said at the beginning, in the way that they use the camera work differently, that's the scene that they all point to say this was a big move in the film itself to demonstrate all of this alienation and hurt and whatever.
Yeah, very, very purposeful cinematography here. Definitely.
Yeah. Let's go to Bill, who is calling from New Hampshire. Hi, Bill. You're on The Culture Show. Thank you for calling.
Hey, guys. So I wasn't alive when this came out. My parents were getting married when this debuted in '76. So I watched this as a younger man in my 20s, and I thought it was, kind of just grimy and grungy. I could see how it was kind of a culty film. But now watching it, I was just floored at how representative the protagonist's attitude is of the hardline MAGA culture. It may as well have been Trump sitting in the driver's seat. The way that he was portraying the people that he hated, and it just seemed so visceral of a representation of that hardline right MAGA mentality. It honestly creeped me out because it was so starkly representative.
Well, Bill, I think it's so interesting what you said at the beginning, too, about having one notion that has definitely changed with the times, because, of course, so many people have held up Travis Bickle as the anti-hero, because we haven't even talked yet about Jodie Foster and her young prostitute character and his intent to, quote-unquote, rescue her and what that represents. But we know the taxi driver posters are in so many places and dorms, and so many people looked up to that character.
Well, and I also want to ask you a question. Do you think that lots of folks have compared him to the active shooters, that for those guys, and they're mostly guys, who, after you get the bio on who they were after the horrific incident, they're alone, they feel isolated, they don't feel understood, they feel like I have a mission and I'm going to do it through killing people. That's the kind of analogy I've heard from a lot of people. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's unlike it's also, it's young white men. And you see this guy and you go, oh, look, it's not necessarily young, but a younger white man. And that you're spot on. And then in like kind of my only follow on it, it's like, is this when America was great? Is this what it is? Is this what we're trying to get back to? I don't know. I'm just still like kind of mind blown by all of this. But yeah, I totally agree.
Bill, thank you for the call. I think we all at this panel had this same experience in watching this again. I guess this is also a good moment to talk about Jodie Foster. First of all, the backstory on this is pretty fascinating. 12 years old, Jodie Foster, playing this 12-year-old prostitute in the film, whom Travis Bickle is ultimately trying to rescue because he sees how she's being treated. But here we have Jodie Foster, who is one of the veterans on this film. She'd already done so many television shows and films, and then when they went to Cannes to do press, she was the only one who was able to really speak French fluently, so she was handling a lot of the interviews. But of course, we've talked about Scorsese, we've talked about De Niro, but a very, very substantive, incredible performance from Jodie Foster too.
Yeah, she's fantastic in the role, going toe to toe with Robert De Niro in a film where people speak about this performance of his as being one of the legendary performances. They forget to mention his scene partner. She's just as good.
Let's go to one of the scenes in which they come together after they form an initial bond. And here's Iris, again played by a young Jodie Foster, talking with Travis in a diner as he questions her relationship with her pimp, Sport, played by Harvey Keitel.
Who's a killer?
That guy Sport's a killer. That's who's a killer.
Sport never killed him.
He killed someone.
He's a Libra.
He's a what?
I'm a Libra, too. That's why we get along so well.
He looks like a killer to me.
I think that cancers make the best lovers, but God, my whole family are air signs.
He's also a dope shooter.
So what makes you so high and mighty? Will you tell me that? Didn't you ever try looking in your own eyeballs in the mirror?
So two things to talk about here. What is he doing with this character? Because it's at odds with, unless, of course, he's building himself up as this person who can rescue her when just about everybody else he wants to destroy. But then also, again, you can just hear that in that performance, the talent that clearly Jodie Foster was born with and was already just so advanced in her career at the young age of 12.
Masterful interaction with him. What I heard in it was, she's, we know what she is at this point. She's a prostitute. He keeps questioning before this, how old are you? And she confirms that she's 12. And he, tells her what her pimp has said about her in most vulgar terms. And here she is acting like she's 12 and like she's a grown person saying, oh, I'm a Libra. What does this have to do with the price of anything? That she's gone off in a totally different direction. And questioning whether he has the right to question Sport, her pimp, because, he should look at himself. So it's a pretty sophisticated response to him, while at the same time she's sort of off in some cloud talking about who's an air sign and who's a Libra and who's a Cancer.
She's deflecting for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, this is the thing that he has latched onto as a potential for something that to be known for. He can maybe he can rescue this person, where throughout the rest of the film he's so fixated on washing everything away. Something about her age, it's like the only good thing about his character and morality. Like he sees this young girl and wants to help in his own violent and misguided, self-serving sort of way.
Now, if we were to project forward to 2026, we can talk about that group of people who are insistent that there is some kind of organized pedophilia by certain people going on everywhere, such as the guy that went to shoot up the pizza shop in Washington, D.C., convinced that there was a group of kids down there being held, when there are actually many irises out here for real right now. They don't seem to be addressing, but that sort of struck me at the time, is that here's this guy, he's weird about everything else, he wants to focus on this. Well, in his case, Travis Bickle's case, she is really who she is, says she is, and he knows that. But anyway, as I said, if you project forward to 2026, something else is going on, perhaps, if we look at that character in that way.
Well, again, our number to call or text to talk about Taxi Driver on its 50th anniversary is 617-300-3838. Again, 617-300-3838. Jason in Weymouth texts that Bickle's issues and social isolation started well before his military stint, which was a perfect match for him. So this is maybe a time to introduce... Callie, you had a question this morning about what was the ending of this movie all about. And so I'm going to introduce my theory here because it actually connects to that notion of military history. So we learn early on in the film that he is a military veteran from Vietnam. However, at the end of the film, when Sybil Shepherd gets into his taxi, and for people who don't know, spoiler alert, he basically takes out everybody who's affiliated with the prostitution ring under which Jodie Foster has been put into, and he's proclaimed a hero for shooting everybody. Lots of blood, very, very violent. There are headlines to this effect. There are newspaper articles that Scorsese has us dive into and understand him, and she gets into his cab and is aware of what he's done. So when earlier in the film, when he's going on this rampage, he's sporting a mohawk. In this encounter, presumably just weeks, if not a few months later, his hair is back to normal.
Yeah, full head of hair.
Full head of hair, which does not grow that fast, which makes me think that this is all a lie. This is everything that he's conceiving in his own head, including perhaps the military history. Did he actually serve as a Marine? Does he comport himself like a Marine might? I think that this is all this man who is so isolated, spending so many hours in his cab, driving around the city of New York in the middle of the night, unable to sleep, has conjured this notion of himself.
Huh.
All based on hair length.
So what do you say, Mark? 'Cause I really
it's
wanna know.
quite possible. I think about that final scene after, this incident of violence that launches him to sort of anti-hero status. I thought that Sybil Shepherd getting in the car, I wonder if he's dreaming about that when it's happening. But it seems as though it's taking place. It's just such an odd, dreamy scene where they're having this sort of knowing back and forth of just greeting each other, not really diving into their history. And then she gets out of the car, he comps her the ride, and then just kind of takes off smiling like a hero. But then we get these quick flashes right as he's pulling away of him in the rear view, just really choppy cuts to once again put you off kilter and let you know that it's still not all right in this man's head.
So even though he may have been made whole by being proclaimed a hero and getting the girl in the end, we're still seeing this fragmented vision.
Assuming that happened. But if the two of you are saying he imagined it, then
well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
My question is, well, why didn't their connection go further as opposed to just he's looking at her, they talk and she gets out?
I think it's because he shot those guys. I think that it's so violent, and it's been such in the headlines with the diagrams of what he's done. I can't see how she would go back to him after that.
Because it didn't happen.
Right.
So this is my other part of this.
Granted,
I don't know the justice system 50 years ago, but I can't imagine that even if you were exacting even if you could claim it was self-defense, that you would be acquitted of all of those murders. It's just so unrealistic. As Chelsea, our producer, was also pointing out this morning, there's a whole subplot that involves a presidential candidate who hops into his cab at one point, and they have a whole conversation. Well, this is not long after Ford was shot. In fact, that somewhat informed Paul Schrader writing this story, because that's a through line here, is that Travis Bickle at one point is trying to assassinate a presidential candidate. There is no presidential candidate, even in the 1970s, who's going to hop into the back of a cab in New York City, no matter how much you want to be talking to the people for your campaign. There are things that don't make sense, and I don't think that they're plot holes. I think it kind of goes into this notion that we're watching this horrific fever dream.
Right. Like, is this really happening to him?
Well, I picked up on, he's narrating the whole film, when he writes his letter home and how much of this is a fantasy. So here's the narration of Travis's letter home to his parents, in which he embellishes his life experiences in the big city.
Father and mother, I'm sorry again I cannot send you my address like I promised to last year. But the sensitive nature of my work for the government demands utmost secrecy. I know you will understand. I am healthy and well and making lots of money. I have been going with a girl for several months, and I know you would be proud if you could see her. Her name is Betsy, but I can tell you no more than that.
Hey, Gabby, you can't park here.
So he's narrating it. We see him writing it, and then he's pulled up at a stop watching this campaign stop with Palatine, who Betsy works for. And then the cabbie says, you got to leave. You can't just sit around here. So maybe he's dreaming there too. I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. But I just noted that obviously in his head, this is who he is as he writes to the parents. And Jared, you question whether he ever was in the Marines. I don't know. He says, the sensitive nature of my work for the government. We know that's a lie.
Absolutely.
So,
well, before we go to break, let's take one more call. And again, our number is 617-300-3838. We'll go to Christina in Rhode Island. Hi, Christina.
Hi, how are you? I haven't seen this movie in decades. I saw it a long time ago, and I'm always looking to see how these movies sort of hold up over time. And I think the way this movie presents Jodie Foster and Sybil Shepherd as such objects of desire, and he is such a violent man, but yet the only people who are killed are other men, seems like it's not, I mean, we're talking about how it could be all a fever dream, but I mean, it certainly belies the fact that when women are the subjects of obsession of psychopathic men, usually those women become the victims. And it is interesting to me that in this movie that is so violent and gritty, that we don't see a realistic presentation of the fact that women really do become the victims of these kinds of people.
Yeah, that would be the much more realistic way to go in the plot. It's when she it's upon her rejection of him that he finally snaps, and he doesn't lash out at Betsy. He lashes out at Palantine, or concocts a plot to assassinate Palantine as a way of getting back to her. Yeah, that's definitely, I agree that is not the way that would play out in reality.
And I remember thinking that last night too, thinking, yes, he interesting how he walked away from that, and interesting how he then didn't project on the Jodie Foster character as another embodiment who could grow up to be the woman who just rejected him, especially both being blondes. Well, we are talking about Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver. I'm joined by Callie Crossley and Mark Anastasio of the Coolidge Corner Theatre. You can call or text us at 617-300-3838. The conversation continues. Stay with us.
The world takes you outside your borders.
Johannesburg,
Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, Kyiv,
Chiba, Japan. Because what happens there?
When it comes to EVs, Chinese cars eat everyone's lunch.
Affects what happens at home.
The fact that the sides are talking again, that's a positive step.
I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler. Listen each weekday to The World.
This afternoon at 3 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And the Mass Historical Society, presenting the exhibition 1776, Declaring Independence, with revolutionary artifacts, letters, and more. Open March 6th through December 19th. More at masshist.org. And Gentle Giant Moving and Storage Company, offering local, long-distance office and piano moving with 23 locations throughout New England and across the country. More information at gentlegiant.com.
From your neighborhood to your newsfeed, GBH News is your trusted source for the news that matters to you. Find us wherever you are at GBH News and always at GBH 89.7. GBH News, what matters to you.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. For this month's Wednesday watch party, we're revisiting Taxi Driver. It's sleepless nights, neon streets, and a city seen through the eyes of a man coming apart. It's a film soaked in dread and decay, but also in loneliness. It's a portrait of someone who cannot connect, cannot belong, and who turns that isolation into a dangerous sense of mission. I'm here with Culture Show co-host Callie Crossley and Mark Anastasio, artistic director at the Coolidge Corner Theatre. And we'd love your take. What do you notice when you watch Taxi Driver today? What do you make of Travis Bickle now? Call or text us at 617-300-3838, or you can join us here at the Boston Public Library on the crowd mic. Again, our number is 617-300-3838. Well, we have saved one of the biggest scenes in this movie for this final part of our conversation. Of course, something that's been replicated. Of course, something that apparently seems to revisit Robert De Niro every day of his life if he's out on the streets of New York City. And it's this one, the famous scene in which Travis Bickle is looking in the mirror, drawing his gun, and preparing for an imagined confrontation.
You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me? Well, then who the hell else are you talking to? Talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here. Who the f*** do you think you're talking to? Oh, yeah? Okay. Huh?
I mean, it's been so parodied now, but seeing it in its context, it's beyond chilling, because this is a man who has moved from, I just hate all of these elements of society, to actually acting upon it, because this follows a scene where he has equipped himself with all manner of weapons that he's built and constructed within the confines of his coat, and then you see how he's preparing to go out in the world and looking in the mirror and having this conversation, which has been probably mimicked by every acting student or so many acting students throughout history, but again, when you see it in its context, it becomes something altogether different.
Yeah, I was trying to find the piece of dialogue that happened shortly when he talks about, I'm preparing for my mission. I had to get ready, and now, I'm getting ready.
Yeah, he brings it up a couple times.
Yeah.
There's the scene where he's talking with Peter Boyle's character about his frustrations, and he mentions that he thinks that it's all building to something, that he's going to have to lash out in some way. So there's all this great sort of tension building leading up. And this scene is, it's incredible. It's probably been mimicked, you're right, by anybody who's ever wanted to act.
Well, he goes too from being somewhat clean cut. Again, when we first meet him meeting Sybil Shepherd and trying to have some semblance of normalcy, he's cleaned himself up again with the jacket and the hair, and it's almost an unrecognizable Robert De Niro, especially for the way his hair is kind of swept over in this preppy look, to see him then evolve into this character who is just filled with hate, and you can see how his face contorts. At this point, he's not wearing a shirt. You can see he's stripping away these layers of himself, literally, so that he becomes this almost animal, this creature. Let's go to our callers. We have one who wants to talk about this scene in particular. Let's go to Jack in West Roxbury. Hi, Jack.
Yeah, hi. Regarding the mirror scene, I seem to remember maybe improv that scene, that it wasn't, at least not as filmed, it was not in Schrader's original script.
That's true. Schrader said the best line in the movie is one he didn't write, that De Niro improv'd it.
And, okay, and of course, it's a perfect metaphor for one of maybe the central truth of the movie, that De Niro's talking to himself, yet he's talking to all the scum on the street, and that circles back, and it's his reflection. So in himself are all those he hates, and if you want to, the circle is complete. He wants to kill them, he wants to maybe kill himself or self-destruct in some way. I'm not sure, but it's a circular, the person and then the image of the person, and along with his monologue to himself.
Well, Jack, it's a great observation. Thank you so much for the call. There's a lot of lore. Mark, maybe you know some of this. There's a lot of lore around this. So we do know it's been acknowledged by Schrader, been acknowledged by De Niro, that this was definitely improvised. But with myriad explanations. De Niro said that he had seen Springsteen a couple of nights prior in a club and was inspired by that. We had somebody who reached out to the Culture Show, a listener, earlier, within the last week, and sent an email explaining that there is a parallel here, that in a 1960 episode of The Twilight Zone, a man panics as his reflection in the mirror begins speaking to him as he delivers this line again from The Twilight Zone.
You talking to me? You talking to me? Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure you are. Now, me in the mirror, we're having a talk.
So that is pretty interesting. Again, 1960 Twilight Zone, 1976 Taxi Driver, man in front of a mirror, man confronting this image of himself. It's pretty fascinating if you think about it. It's not to say that he cribbed it, because as De Niro said, he was inspired by Springsteen. It could have been something he saw 16 years prior, because De Niro was only 26, or at least the character is 26, so he could have been 10 years old seeing this on The Twilight Zone and just stores it away. But we thank that listener for sending this our way, because it is a very interesting parallel.
That's very cool. I hadn't heard that before. That's incredible.
I love when I'm the one teaching at the
that's pretty neat.
movie theater guy
that's
something.
Pretty neat.
I found this exact quote when he was polishing up his boots and burning up the dead flowers. He tried to send Betsy and sharpening the knife, leaving a note for Iris. He left a note for Iris with money in it saying, "Please go home, stop doing this." The voiceover is, "I've never been any choice for me. My whole life pointed in one direction."
Well, again, our number is 617-300-3838. We have a text from Barb in Newton saying, when I was a first-year student, the Master's in Social Work program at Smith College in the late 70s, taxi driver was used as the test topic for one of my first exams. We had to, quote-unquote, diagnose Travis Bickle, who turned out to have a classic borderline personality disorder, BPD, given his erratic emotions, intense abandonment, and unstable condition. Or unstable relationships. She says, I've been able to easily diagnose clients with quintessential BPD since then.
Wow. Well, he's got plenty for her to work with.
Certainly a protocol
I can say that.
For that.
Yeah, I can definitely say that.
Again, our number is 617-300-3838. We also have a text from Dan saying, white flight and defunding the cities in the 70s happened everywhere, and then self-righteous people like Travis think they are better than others are the real monsters, and it's reminiscent of today, like the Christmas Adventure Club in one battle after another. I mean, yeah, Mark, that's a great question for you. Where do you see Taxi Driver filtering in film history after this, and if you see it go all the way up into the present with one battle after another?
It's been a long time since I played it. I don't know why I don't have a 50th anniversary screening of it on the books already. It would be very interesting to see how an audience reacts to it with everything that's going on in sort of right-wing politics in this country. I think that there would be a very visceral reaction like we had and some of our callers have had. I hope that where it lives is where Scorsese intended, that it's a stark warning of this type of individual. I don't know, but now I guess we didn't really heed the warning because now we have an entire political movement thinking the way that this anti-hero. That doesn't seem strong enough to call him an anti-hero.
Yeah, no.
But this violent, disturbed man, the way that he saw the world, is kind of being platformed now in such a huge way. I do kind of, I know you hated it, Callie, but I kind of want to play it and see what a crowd does with it.
Well, I want to just underscore that, it's not enough, I think, to just rest all of that on Travis Bickle, because the rest of the movie's messaging in terms of the slurs and the particular anti-blackness, and he's at the beginning. I played the cut when he's has names for everybody, but he has a particular, and then everybody around him, not just him, the cab drivers in the little group, the people on the street, everybody's got a slur or some kind of indication that the reason we're all here and the reason it needs cleaning up is because of all of these black people. I mean, that is an overriding message. So, I nothing to do with that except to say, and here we are again.
Well, it was also a glimpse into, I was thinking that if this was the case, that this was all imagined and that this is living in his head, then it becomes a very profoundly disturbing lesson about the thoughts and people around you. Anybody who's walking down the street around you, or the person who's driving your cab. Of course, we know that everybody is different, and these thoughts are harbored by Travis Bickle out there. And maybe it would never be the first movie to explore this, but it certainly exploded it and put it out into the open. And I think you can probably trace a lot of films that came after. But maybe for some reason I started to land on that, what was that Michael Douglas movie where
Falling Down.
But of course he was very outward about it, or he was very inward about it until he wasn't. The same with Travis Bickle.
Right, and there's another one with Neighbor in it, something. Question, if it's all a dream, why did he, after he shot up everybody, then attempt to shoot himself and ran out of bullets?
No, he just does the gesture
at the very end. But before that, he tries to shoot himself several times, and he changes guns. And Iris is over in the corner just crying hysterically, and he's trying this gun, trying that gun, but there's no bullets.
Unless you believe that he believes that he's somebody who isn't supposed to die, and that's why he randomly picks up 2 guns, and both guns happen to have 0 bullets left in them.
Well, there you go.
Hey, next time, let's do a fun one.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not enjoying this? Your first foray into the Wednesday watch party? Where
just do it. Let's pick a comedy.
We just all want to climb under the desk. No wonder you. See, you're the smart one. This is why you haven't programmed it at the Coolidge.
Well, no, I mean, it's been a long time. It's probably been a decade since I played it, and it's, because the themes in this film are so strong, they're for a reason to do it, but
I guess 50th anniversary.
50th anniversary and the climate that we're in. I just don't know. But is it too late? Is it too late to stop these Travis Bickles the way that Scorsese was hoping that we could?
Well, as we say on this show over and over, sometimes you can't see the reality, but you can see stuff through art. Not that I am suggesting anybody sits through the 2 hours of that, but you get my point in general.
Good to be aware. Well, Mark, I'm taking your note. I'm going to end our show right now. Thank you.
Wait, that wasn't the point.
But I'll take the note nonetheless. Mark Anastasio, it has been so much having you here with us. Callie, of course, as always. We've been talking about the 1976 film Taxi Driver with Callie Crossley and Mark Anastasio, artistic director at the Coolidge Corner Theatre. To keep on top of all of their programming, visit their website. And tune in tomorrow or watch us on the GBH News YouTube channel for actors Stephen Moyer and Jack Davenport. They joined me in studio for a preview of their starring role in Masterpiece's new The Forsytes. Thanks today to Craig Lamolt for curating our Culture Cast. Today's engineer is Bill Piazzatelli. The BPL technical and logistics crew, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Juan Jose Cadena, Chris Hanks, Pat Lally, Olivia Corsillo, and thanks to the Newsfeed Cafe. If you ever miss us here on the radio, you can keep up with all things arts and culture by way of the Culture Show podcast. Just go to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you to everyone who came down to be with us here at the Boston Public Library today. We really loved seeing you. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
GBH's All Things Considered is coming up this afternoon at 4, with Marketplace at 6:30. But first, get a global view of the news with The World. Up next, here on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you
and members of the GBH Champions and Beacon Circles. These most generous annual contributors lead the way in sustaining GBH as a public media resource available and free to all. Learn more at gbh.org/support.
For over 2 centuries, archaeologists have hailed Pompeii as a sophisticated city frozen in time by a disaster. But now, they are unearthing a darker history. Catch Nova, Pompeii's Secret Underworld, tonight at 9 on GBH2.
Celebrate the stories of 2 trailblazing women at GBH's Beyond the Page live event. On March 30th, you'll hear New York Times bestselling author Marie Benedict discuss her new novel, Daughter of Egypt. The book tells the story of 2 women separated by 3,000 years, one an ancient pharaoh, the other an archaeologist. Benedict will describe their real-life legacies, and you'll get a signed copy of the book. Get your ticket when you go to gbh.org/events.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org.